Good evening. I'll call the meeting to order at this time. If you will, please rise for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'll call on Mayor Pro Tem Scott to lead us in the invocation.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight, Lord, to do business in the community which we're so proud of, that we live in and serve in, Father. We pray for those citizens that are not able to be here tonight, Lord, those that are sick, ill, or injured, Father, that you'll be comfort with those. Father, we've had some loss. We pray that you'll be with those that have lost loved ones throughout this last time of our we've seen you. Pray, Lord, that you help us make the decisions that are best to serve our community as a whole, Father, and as we continue to grow and prosper in this wonderful town, we're proud to live in and serve in. We ask all this in Christ's name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, I can assure you that we paid our utility bill, I hope. I apologize for the heat. We have an issue with our HVAC system, so please bear with us. We'll keep this door open as long as we can stand it, Mr. Manager, and hopefully the traffic noise will be bearable. So, gentlemen, you have the agenda in front of you. Do have a couple of changes or requests to change. Like item number 7 under business items, discussion concerning the water plant expansion timeline. I'd like to move that to a budget session. Give us plenty of time to discuss that because that is a major project. And then item number 8, consideration and approval to adopt resolution 616 to begin the process of closing North 2nd Street from the intersection of North Street and 2nd Street. I would like to remove that from the agenda at this time, and then we can bring it back up once we have more information on the timeline. Any other changes to the agenda, Mr. Manager?
No. We had some replacement pages in page 5 through 24. Everyone should have been advised and should have those replaced for some information that didn't apply to the rezoning that you'll hear tonight.
Any other changes, gentlemen? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second. A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. We have a couple of presentations this evening. The first one is a proclamation proclaiming April 18th, 2018 as Electrical Lineman Day. I'll ask Mr. Cradle if he'll come, please. Anyone else? Read the proclamation. Town of Smithfield Proclamation, Electrical Lineman Appreciation Day, April 18, 2018. Whereas the town of Smithfield honors the profession of lineman as the profession is steeped in personal, family, and professional tradition. And whereas electrical linemen are often first responders during storms and other catastrophic events, working to repair broken lines to make the scene safe for the citizens of the town of Smithfield, as well as other public safety workers. And whereas electrical linemen work on the town of Smithfield power lines 24 hours a day, 365 days a year to keep the electricity flowing. And whereas due to the danger of their work with thousands of volts of electricity high atop power lines, these linemen put their lives at risk every day for the citizens of the town of Smithfield, with little recognition from the community regarding the danger of their work. And whereas the United States Senate in April of 2013 first recognized the efforts of electrical linemen in keeping the power on and protecting public safety, and has designated by resolution the celebration of a National Lineman Appreciation Day. Now therefore, I, Andy Moore, Mayor of the town of Smithfield, along with the members of the town council, do hereby proclaim April the 18th, 2018 as Electrical Lineman Appreciation Day. And we call upon the citizens of the town of Smithfield to recognize and appreciate the hard work, innovation, and dedication that these public servants make every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life. Thank you very much for all that you do. Thank you. Next presentation is Parks and Recreation updates on the Miracle League Field, Inclusion Park, and grand opening of the Sarah Yard Community Center. I'll call upon our Parks and Rec Director, Gary Johnson. Gary.
All right, Mayor, Council, thank you for letting me speak just briefly tonight. I'll try not to be long. There are a lot of good things going on within the Parks and Recreation Department. We wanted to share those with you. Part of it is the opening of the Sarah Yard Community Center. As you know, that opened on March the 26th. Our hours are Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 3:30 to 6:30, and on Saturdays from 12 noon to 4 p.m. We are open this week 1 to 5 every day for spring break to give the kids something to do and something to be a part of. Although we didn't open to the participation that we had hoped for, we still have some decent numbers out there. We're servicing 4, 5, 6 kids a day, and as the word gets out and spreads, they become more and more every day. So we're excited about the opportunities that we have out there, and I think the kids are having a really good time. We've done some marketing through Facebook. We've created a page for the center itself. We put it on our town's website. We've sent flyers throughout the schools. We've done some door-to-door doorknob hangers and civic groups and a lot of other things to try to get the citizens informed that we are open and that we are ready for the kids to come and be participants. We have had a lot of citizens to offer scholarships to any of the kids where it's not affordable, and we are ready to do that as well. Next is the partnership to build a miracle, which is the all-inclusive playground and the adaptive play baseball field out at the community park. That has been a long-going project. It started in 2007 when the Miracle League of Johnston County and the Partnership for Children came out and they wanted to build separate facilities for different purposes, different recreational purposes for those with disabilities. One was a baseball field to offer baseball for kids that couldn't play in a mainstream baseball league, and they couldn't play in the mainstream baseball league, and one was a playground that was not just for those with disabilities, but would allow kids to play together with disabled and able-bodied children. The two groups formed a coalition called the Partnership to Build a Miracle to go out and do a fundraising campaign. They raised about $360,000, and then the town, through you guys graciously allowing us to apply for a couple of grants, received a grant for $350,000 and another grant for $160,000 to be able to complete this project. The baseball field has a rubberized surface, all the bases, batter boxes, there's no dirt, wheelchairs, walkers, crutches, and everything is able to play on the field, and it really turned out nice. They opened up their first game on March the 24th, and they're going to have the grand opening for the field on April the 14th, along with the inclusive playground. The Partnership for Children Park, an all-inclusive playground, which is a place to play for all. We will have the grand opening there on April the 14th as well. It is about a 2.5-acre park. It has rubberized surface as well as multiple areas as well, but everything is handicap accessible. All the equipment is handicap accessible. It's ramped for wheelchairs. It has a rocker. It's actually one of a kind in the county right now. Actually, the Miracle League Field and the Inclusion Playground are one of a kinds for Johnston County. There'll be a big draw, and we already have a ton of people that are playing on it already. Like I said, we will have the grand opening on April the 14th. We had a big landscaping day, a community event this past week. We had 100 volunteers from throughout the community to come out and help us plant over 1,000 plants. So what you see there was before we got all the plants in the ground, and it was amazing to see those people out there on Saturday and the amount of work that they put in and the amount of time that they, it didn't take them long to put the plants in the ground, so it was really nice. Like I say, the inclusion playground is scheduled to be completed by the end of the month. The grand opening is scheduled for the 14th at 11 a.m. We would like to invite all of you guys to come out and attend. The Miracle Leagues will play games at 9 and 12 that day, and we've invited Mayor Moore to come and do the ribbon cutting for us. It is a huge accomplishment for the partnership, as well as the Parks and Recreation Department and the town, as it is the first and only facility of its kind in the county. So you can see some of the equipment that we have out there that is pretty new and to the Parks and Recreation, that is available to Parks and Recreation departments for that. So. And the last thing we have coming up is the opening of the boat ramp. You know, the Wildlife Commission has come in and renovated our boat ramp, and as part of that, we're going to have a ribbon cutting opening of the boat ramp on July the 14th at the boat ramp at the Town Commons, and we'd like to invite you all to that at 10 a.m. We're going to do something that we hope is an annual event that's going to be pretty big. It's going to be the Smithfield River Rat Regatta on the Noose, which is a cardboard boat race from the boat ramp to the bridge at 70, right there at the stage. You can use corrugated cardboard, glue, and duct tape to construct your boat, and it must carry 2 passengers. So we'll give out awards to the fastest times. First, second, third place. We'll give out the best decorated and prettiest boat, and we'll also give a Titanic award to the most memorable sinking. So I'm sure we'll have some of those to vote on as well. You probably have, that'll be the biggest competition, I would imagine. So we'd all like to invite you out for that, and we do appreciate your support and what we're doing in the Parks and Recreation Department for the citizens of our community. So, thank you, guys.
Thank you, Gary. I certainly will try to be there for the ribbon cutting of the boat ramp, but Chief, you mind if I just stay on the fire department's boat during that time? So sure about the cardboard boat. Thank you, Gary.
Yes, sir.
All exciting things, and council, I do encourage you all to attend those events. You do have a flyer at your seat regarding the Partnership for Children and the Miracle League grand opening as well. So at this time, I think we have a special guest in the audience, the Smithfield Selma Chamber Executive Director, Mike Mancuso. Mike, if you would come forward and introduce yourself and welcome.
Thank you very much.
Glad to have you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council. I just wanted to stop by and introduce myself. I am Mike Mancuso, the new president of the Smithfield Selma Chamber. And I just really wanted to let you know that I'm here as a resource for the city anytime you need me. I have an economic development background, and I'm already working with some departments here in the city to try to help things along and help our businesses. I love this town. This is when I first came down here back in December. It reminded me an awful lot of the small town of Salem, Ohio that I came from up in Ohio. But with all the infrastructure, I always wish we had. Just a lovely town, and I'm really happy to be here and looking forward to working with everybody in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Okay, at this time, we'll move on to the public hearings. Our first public hearing this evening is not a quasi-judicial hearing, so no need to swear anyone in. And it is RZ-18-04 Adams and Hodge Engineering. The applicant is requesting to rezone approximately 67.88 acres of land from R8 residential zoning district to the PUD Special District Planned Unit Development with a PUD master plan for a 288 to 315 unit residential development. The property considered for rezoning is located on the east and west side of Buffalo Road, approximately 570 feet north of its intersection with Bookadary Road. The property is further identified as Johnston County Tax ID 140-75013. That's on page 5
of your agenda package, Mr. Chairman. This time I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
Make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second. Motion and a second. All in favor? Motion carries.
Mr. Planning Director, I'll turn it over to you at this time.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I want to give a little history here. This project, back in 2008, there was a rezoning from RA to with a special use permit for a PUD. That expired after 5 years of non-use. So I just want to give you history on that. October 3rd, 2017, we adopted a new UDO. Now PUDs are a special, I got this even wrong on my presentation here, a special zoning district. It's not a special use district, special zoning district. In December 1st, 2017, Adams and Hodge made application. That application was incomplete. January 5th, they resubmitted, and that was accepted. This item was pulled from the last council agenda. I just want to remind you of that at the applicant's request. So this has been re-advertised, and the reason is staff has got a better understanding of the actual zoning process, and I'm going to explain that next. Our old code had what was called special use district rezonings, essentially CUD or SUDs, as it's called in our jurisdiction here, versus special district rezoning. And that distinction was kind of lost on me because I'm from Minnesota. We don't have either of these. And the code wasn't very explicit, and we had a new code at that. And so it's been a learning process for staff, and it's through consultation with the consultant who prepared the plans and reading about North Carolina law that I've now understand the distinction. So what we have tonight is a special district rezoning. So it's a rezoning with a plan, like a special use district rezoning would be, but there's no special use permit. Okay? And it's not quasi-judicial, it's legislative, it's a negotiated zoning district, and the rezoning is to PUD. So it'll be called a PUD on the map. Also, I want to point out that the packet had a number of references to special use permit. I thought I had caught them all, and between putting the packet agenda, I think we grabbed the wrong file. So you had in your packet the same report, except for it still had the special use permit information in there. The data besides that is all the same. We pulled out that and the findings of fact because it's not a special use permit, they're not required. So hope that explains the reason why you've got that at late notice. Really, the review is the same. So the application is for a 298 to 315 detached single-family residential and townhome development. So it's a range of density. They've shown 298 units or lots on the site plan, but they're proposing to potentially turn some of those lots into more lots with townhouses, up to a density of 315. They would be proposing connection to town water and sewer, so annexation, voluntary annexation would be required, or they would have to voluntarily annex to have access to the town utilities. Single-family detached lot sizes would be a little over 3,000 square feet, triplexes smaller at around 2,000, the townhomes the smallest yet, about 14,000 square feet. They are anticipating about 9 phases, roughly 40 units per phase for build-out. The applicant is Adams and Hodge Engineering. The mayor had described the location. The owner is Frank Lee. The total net acreage is 67.88 acres, so it's a big site. It is in the watershed overlay district, so I'll get into that later, but there's watershed rules that apply that impact how the site can be developed, and stormwater components are a big part of that watershed overlay. This is the location. It's very near the Shrek and Community Park. This is an aerial photo of the site. You can see part of it is forested on the east side, and the west side is mostly agricultural with woodlands down by the water, by the river. The little wooded spot in the center of the open area is a farmstead, and there are large trees located there. And you can also see there's sort of a drainage way that flows from that farmstead through the farm field over to a pond in the woods. So there's a little bit of a wetland, and there's also a wet spot in the middle of the woods on the northeast, just to give you a sense of the terrain. The site flows towards the river, and there's also a blue line stream that comes up from the property to the south and reaches slightly into this site, but into the tree line. So this is the proposed development. Again, it shows 298 lots. The applicant is seeking flexibility for additional units up to 315. The applicant has not shown where those townhouses would go in this master plan. So that's something to remember. I'm going to point out the single families lots are these, and these are the townhomes. The more dense townhomes. The triplexes would be somewhere in here if they are allowed to build them in the future and if they choose to. And you can interrupt me if you have any questions. So a special use district rezoning is a negotiated approach to a legislative decision. So this is obviously a new process for me, and I think it's a new process for the city somewhat. It allows flexibility in dimensional standards such as lot sizes and setbacks. That's typically where the flexibility lies. It requires a master plan, so you're rezoning to a plan. The plan sets the land use and the dimensional requirements such as whatever's on the plan, that's what's allowed. In this case, they're looking for additional flexibility to make the townhouses happen, and they provided some details to that effect. Allowed uses are limited to what's on the approved plan. Again, master plan establishes the standards and regulations, and the development must meet or exceed the standards in the UDO. Something else to keep in mind. In reviewing the development's application, they appear to be seeking flexibility, for one, in the number of units, having that type of flexibility. They're looking for reduced lot area from what's in the UDO, and reduced lot frontage, and reduced building separation. Prior to the last meeting, PUDs had to be mixed use. If you recall, you guys passed an amendment to the ordinance that essentially allowed this development to move forward, because this is not technically a mixed-use development. It's a mix of single-family residential types of houses, but not truly a mixed-use development. PUD standards. The PUD standards in our UDO, there's not a lot of them, but the main thing it says you need to have a dense network of narrow interconnected streets and a high proportion of sidewalks and paths. That's in Chapter 10 of our UDO, the performance standards. So that is the bar in which a PUD can be allowed. So in reviewing this plan, you can see all the little dashed green lines, and they're proposing trails wherever you see those dashed green lines. And I'm referring to these running through the middle of these green spaces, and then a trail corridor cutting through the lot area, and these would be on easements on individual lots. So it's a very connected trail system. They've done a great job with interconnectivity of trails and sidewalks. They're proposing sidewalks on two sides of each street, something that we don't require in the UDO, so it's a higher standard. So they've met that completely. The question is whether if they've met that same requirement for street connectivity. And the arrow here represents staff's interpretation is that the UDO or the PUD requirements would be that it has a higher level of street interconnectivity as well. And so that's representing probably where another street could go, and there's a condition of approval that they would provide a street in that location, something to remember as we move through this and get to the conditions later on. I said earlier, this is in a watershed district. The Couple things about being in a watershed district. They are required to have enhanced stormwater management, so a higher level of stormwater management that you would have otherwise in the UDO. For reduced lot sizes, clustering is required. And clustering is essentially moving the lots away from the Neuse River in this case, providing more open space, more clustering of development away from that water body. And there's an open space requirement associated with clustering. And as you get more dense, you need to provide more open space. It's kind of a proportional relationship. As they consider having more townhouse lots, or if they consider going up to 315 units, they're going to need to provide more open space than they're showing on the plan right now. They meet the requirement at present for 298 lots, but for 315 lots, they don't have enough open space. More lots would require, I'm sorry, I already said that. Minimum lot width is 40 feet in the clustering provisions. The PUD would grant that flexibility for less than 40-foot wide lots. Side yard setback is 6 feet. They're seeking flexibility down to 5 feet. Building separation is required to be 12. They're seeking flexibility from that. With the master plan, the required master plan, the code requires a site plan with a whole lot of features. Kind of what you see in your packet is what we got. We don't have a tree preservation plan. We don't really have a landscaping plan, grading, erosion control, stormwater management, utilities, street design and details. We have a little bit of that. Traffic impact study, none was done. And there's some other details that would be required. They've not provided that level of detail, and I wanted to point that out. We are conditioning any approval that level of detail would have to come through, and any plans would have to reflect those changes that would occur. Some of the issues with the development from a staff's perspective is there's no specificity on unit type and location. So where are these townhouses going to go? What are the impacts of the locations? Staff believes they shouldn't be located near the entrances where cars are going to stack up. It's more driveways, less parking. Kind of some of the issues is how does that increased density impact surrounding properties? Are they going to be located in clusters or individuals? The applicant has indicated by conversation that they'll be clustering them into certain areas. That level of detail has not been provided. They have not met all the key clustering provisions for watershed protection. We haven't seen the stormwater management plan, for instance. They haven't provided necessarily all the open space. I already talked about that. I already talked about the PUD street requirements. It's questionable whether they meet that. They certainly meet it on trail connectivity, and it's really kind of a judgment call because there's not a formula. Our code does talk about maximum block lengths of being 1,000 square feet. We're certainly well over 1,000 square feet between streets breaking up blocks, but if you consider the trail corridor, that's the only thing breaking those long blocks up is the trail corridor. So it's a judgment call whether or not they're meeting the intent of the PUD. Just want to make that clear. That's one of the issues. I've made a condition of approval in a sense to bring it to the council's attention for you to deliberate on and to decide for yourselves whether you think this meets the standard for a PUD. They've not shown how they're going to address NCDOT requirements. This is going to be a 4-lane road. The DOT is likely to have turn lane requirements, and no one knows what's really going to be required until a traffic impact study is done. That level of detail is going to have to come after a traffic impact study, and is a requirement of a condition of approval. I already mentioned the block lengths. They are required to show us what is going to be public and what is not for park and recreation. There's a lot of trails on the plan. They do have a park dedication requirement. I don't know if they're going to be dedicating land for parks or trails, or whether it's going to be fee in lieu of, and ultimately that's a council decision. But They've not shown that in their proposal. So as we approve this master plan, we don't know what we're getting in terms of public amenities. Which part of those trails are going to be public? And then the public utility design, we have no details for that. So we're kind of assuming it's going to work, but we don't know. Okay? Tree preservation, much of the site is free of trees, but there are some impacts to trees. That has not been addressed. And tied into that is landscaping. They've shown that kind of conceptually that they're going to meet the buffer requirements, but we don't have any detail. Annexation is not addressed, but if they want town utilities, they'll have to request annexation. And the last one is lateral street connections to future adjacent development. There's a diagram I provided in this presentation that kind of illustrates, it's a formulaic thing about nodes and connections to adjacent properties. It's very well detailed in a comprehensive plan, and as you probably know, a comprehensive plan is our vision for the community, and the UDO is the tools to implement that vision. So lateral connections there's a lot of language in the UDO, in the comp plan suggesting interconnected neighborhoods. And the purpose for interconnected neighborhoods is to alleviate congestion on collector roads and to provide better pedestrian and neighborhood access between neighborhoods and to make emergency vehicle access easier. And they've not provided any lateral connections. And I want to also point out that the property to the south, maybe I'll go back to that slide later, but it's a little more narrow properties sandwiched between this site and Booker Dairy Road, Stevenson Highway. There's no access on Stevenson Highway, and so the only access would be from Buffalo Road for that. And whether or not they could even get two ways in or out of that remnant piece of land is something to consider. They provided some details here on the single-family detached. I just got an illustration here. They're in your packet. And then this would be the optional townhouse development. If they chose to add those additional lots, what they'd be doing is taking, let's say, two single-family lots and breaking it up into, at the final plat, into smaller, narrower lots in a cluster like this. And these are the more dense townhouse that was up in the northeast corner by the woods. More of a row house product. They've got proposed street sections. They're looking at 60-foot and 50-foot right-of-ways. If I can recall, the road widths 31 and 27-foot back-to-back streets. So a variety of street widths and a variety of right-of-way widths, all permitted in our UDO. The outer loop is the wider right-of-way. The cul-de-sacs in the inner street are the narrow right-of-way, just for reference. The planning department is recommending approval of the PUD rezoning, but we've recommended 10 conditions, and I'm going to read those. That a traffic study be conducted, and that the PUD master plan be updated to reflect any recommendations of internal circulation design, site access, location and design, external roadway, internal design and improvements, traffic signals and operations, including signal timing, and any transit service improvements. Number 2, that the applicant submit a voluntary annexation. And 3, that the developer obtain a NC-DOT right-of-way permit and comply with those requirements. And this is the one that I referenced earlier, that an additional east-west street be incorporated into the site plan on the west side of the development consistent with the PUD requirements of the UDO. And this is a staff interpretation. Again, they've more than met the trail requirement. And the question is whether an additional street should be required to meet that requirement. And that's a judgment call on staff and then the town council. I'm recommending that there should be an additional street because that's my interpretation of the UDO requirements. But again, the council is the final decision on PUD requirements. The lateral connections be provided as required in the UDO. That's required in the UDO regardless. It's not an interpretation. It's just required. And with a PUD, you're required to put conditions to bring the development up to standards. And whether or not the council were to include this condition or delete it, it's still a requirement of the UDO unless that requirement is specifically waived by the council. That the public sidewalk be provided along Buffalo Road and incorporated into the PUD master plan. Sidewalks are required along the state DOT for the residential development on one side of the road, but they're on both sides of the road, so there should be connectivity on both sides. They are providing significant trails, so I'm not talking about doubling up. It'd either be a sidewalk or a trail, just that connectivity along the roadway be met. And then that any area dedicated for public park or trails be identified on the master plan. Number 8, I'm asking that if they are going to include townhouses, that they be shown either on an exhibit or on the master plan where they would be located, so we can address that in the master planning process. Of course, we don't have it for you tonight, but we want, again, to be able to address any issues on the master plan up front. And that any changes resulting from this town review, because we're still asking for a lot of additional information, and that if it significantly causes a change to the plans, we want all the information incorporated into a final master plan to be approved by staff. Any material changes to the plan because of the things that are not shown. Material is kind of a judgment call again. I'm talking about, major lot changes, major street relocations, things that are just beyond what you'd expect would require the plan to be readopted, the rezoning to be brought back before the council. So you have a chance to know what you're approving. Okay? That's number 10. The planning board reviewed the application and concurred with staff's recommendations, except condition number 5. There was a kind of a disagreement on the planning board about whether 5 should be included, whether the lateral connections be incorporated. And essentially the planning board said it's required anyway, so let's just delete the condition. It didn't mean it went away. They just couldn't agree on condition number 5. Because conditions 5 and 6 are both UDO requirements. Condition number 4 is an interpretation of the PUD requirements for greater street connectivity, so I want to point that out. Condition number 8 is not an allowed PUD flexibility typically. You can't just, it's not part of the PUD to say I can have a range of lots of lot density. You're allowed that in the zoning district, but the master plan typically is a plan for what you're going to build. They're seeking a flexibility, so I'm suggesting that they provide an exhibit so that we kind of got option A and option B, so we can address any issues related to that potential additional density. Council is required to issue a consistency statement with the approval and the rezoning. Staff has provided our interpretation of its consistency, and we do believe it's consistent with the conditions provided. Staff is requesting the council respectfully review the application, hold the public hearing, and make a decision on the PUD special district rezoning with 10 recommended conditions. Again, the planning board dropped number 5, but it didn't make the condition go away, the requirement go away. Based on consistency with town plans and policies. And with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Is this property in the corridor for the Mountains to the Sea Trail?
It's yes.
Has that been provided for or anything in the, I didn't see it in the plan.
Not specifically, no. There's a question whether it's going to be routed along the frontage of the highway. I mean, there's a number of options in the Mountain to Sea Trail. So again, the level of detail, what is going to be public park and trail is part of that discussion.
It seems to me without a concrete plan that we're being asked to approve 298 building units. However, it may be configured at some point in the future. I mean, that's just what I'm hearing. We don't know where we're gonna put townhomes. We don't know how many units are gonna go on the east side of Buffalo Road, how many are gonna go on the west side. Obviously, acreage limits some of that. Well, I guess what are we being asked to do if we don't have a plan? We don't have a master plan that's gonna be,
You're being asked to approve this master plan with a lot of additional detail to be provided and staff approved.
Let me interject something there. We've had several meetings with the developer, and the developer has a different system that they're used to working with, and we have a system that we're used to working with, and they are a little bit different. So we're trying to work with the developer to meld the two. The developer obviously doesn't want to spend a lot of money creating a plan if we're not going to approve the zoning. So I can certainly sympathize with that. So as an alternative, what we've tried to do is look at the plan that's provided. We believe it's a pretty good plan, although it lacks detail from what the council is used to seeing on these types of things. But we believe that by conditioning it to the point where these things will be added, once the rezoning, if approved, then the developer will make the decision to move forward, hopefully, and invest that money necessary to provide that information.
And
I don't know if that helps or not.
And I just want to add also that, as I pointed in, I think it was condition number 9, if there's significant changes, we would bring it back to the council. If there's decisions that I'm uncomfortable with, because it's a very much different plan, you would get another crack at it.
on the west side of Buffalo Road, it looks like there are 2 entryways on the Buffalo Road. And I know do we know, is that gonna be a right turn only coming out of Buffalo Road, or is there gonna be opportunity for left turns?
Again, we don't know because they've not presented specifically to DOT for comment and review and, preliminary permit approval. That would be in the next phase, and any changes would have to be addressed. And we would require those changes to be, staff would require those changes to be reflected on the master plan before they even go to preliminary plat, so that we have some planet to which we're approving to.
I just want to make sure what we're being asked to approve, so when we're sitting back here 3, 6, 9 months from now, we're not
Well, I think
saying,
that
"Oh,
the
really?"
developer is here tonight. I think he'll speak, and maybe he can help answer some of those questions for you as well.
I mean, I'm absolutely good with the concept. I just want to make sure we're not making a decision that,
Well, the plan that you have in front of you is what you're looking to approve. It just lacks some detail, and that's what the planning director is trying to bring forward is, we just need to point out, that's, our job to point out that this it does lack detail, and they're very well aware that it lacks it based on what you're used to seeing, but they have no problem providing it. They just want to make sure that they're spending their money wisely.
Can I ask, what, on those conditional uses that was presented to them, what is their response to the 10 conditional uses? I mean,
The conditions.
Conditions, because that's important too,
Sure.
Are they willing to do those things? So if you approve with those conditions, is that something that they're willing to do?
I think that's something they need to explain.
Okay.
And, you're right. The conditions need to be agreed to by the applicant, and they are objecting to the lateral connections and the PUD street. Those are the 2 items that they object to. And they're not on the plan. And they will speak to that.
So, at this time, if it's appropriate, we'll ask the applicant to come forward. Maybe address your question, Mr. Barber. If you will, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Reed Smith, 114 West Main Street. I would like to address a lot of these things, so I appreciate you taking the time tonight to allow us to present this development for your consideration. Appreciate your time and service to hear this. I guess it's my role tonight to kind of tell you guys, after hearing all that, why this is a good idea and why it would benefit the town of Smithfield and hopefully the future residents that will live here in the process. So that's my task here tonight. So first, just wanted to let you guys know a little bit about our development team. My name's Reed. I own 127 homes. We were 2017 the largest builder in Johnson County on homes closed. We will be building, hopefully, the homes here. Part of our team is Donnie Adams with Adams and Hodge Engineering, one of the largest engineering firms here in Johnson County, and James Lipscomb, co-owner of Hometown Realty, the largest brokerage here in Johnston County. So we're local. I mean, we know this area well, this product, this market, this town, very, very well. This is not our first rodeo through the PUD system. We have taken several of these projects through the PUD system. Here it was the first, and as the town manager said, some things we may be a little different. Y'all do things a little different. We're just trying to, get to know each other, I guess. And I do commend staff. We've been at it for about 6 months now, and but we do feel it's time to bring it before you. This development was modeled off of a development that we did in Clayton called Parkview. I've given staff information about that development, asked that they go ride, see, look, and when we are in front of planning board, encourage them to do the same, and would encourage y'all to do the same. Parkview is off of City Road in Clayton. It was entitled in January of 2015, proposed to be a 7-year project. We have absorbed units in Parkview at 70 to 80 units a year since then, and hope to close the project out in 3.5 to 4 years, beating our projection by 2 to 3 years. Was a majorly successful neighborhood for the town, for the residents, all involved. And when this tract came along with a good friend, Mr. Frank Lee, we thought, what better way to replicate that, especially here in the town of Smithfield, than this tract here. So we envisioned it and thought it would be a great idea. Our opinion on this process, and I believe the town manager alluded to it a little bit, is this master plan is a guiding document. I mean, it is not a final signed, sealed, and delivered development, and that is its nature. To get this to the first for sale sign in the yard will be $3 million of work between now and the first for sale sign. A lot of that up front in due diligence, and a lot of things that the town planners pointed out, TIAs, working with DOT, watershed stuff, erosion control plans, engineering plans. A lot of those things that you just don't do that until you get some sort of kind of go ahead on the entitlement. And I think one key thing that has been left out is each phase of this neighborhood comes back to your staff and to your engineers and to your group to help us walk through to implement this neighborhood. Not sure if anybody on the council is a town planner, but that is what you have a staff for, is after we have conceptually agreed on what this neighborhood could be, which is what I'm going to describe next, the town staff then works with us phase by phase to go through the process to finalize each detail to then deliver it and build it to the standards that we agree on with them. So first, the neighborhood is, as it seems, I know there's been a lot of discussion on the product type. I personally think it's being over sensitized. In Parkview and Clayton, we had the same product type approved in the same method. We showed the lot boxes, which you can see. Just matters where the little house boxes go. The lots may shift with the higher density townhomes, but it's a small unit. We're asking for the appropriate density. You know what the density could go up and down towards. It just depends on product type. We got that approved in town of Clayton, and it really didn't even come up. In Parkview, we started with a single family concept and needed and wanted the triplex plan as a backup in case we were priced too high or if the market was different. We just wanted an alternative housing product type to have in our back pocket in case market conditions allowed. In Parkview, we went with the single-family model, and it worked. We have not built a single triplex in Parkview. Our intent here is to go in. It's a new market. I mean, we have high hopes for it, but I think y'all are well know. I mean, this really hasn't been done in this market in a while, so we want to kind of test the waters as well and have a different product type in case we need to put it in. In that case, we would work with staff to make sure it is placed properly, that it is not necessarily at an entrance where all those driveways are going to let out when people drive in and out, that it is on a run and there's not a triplex and then a single house and then a triplex. I mean, obviously, we're going to be responsible developers and work with staff to make sure that it is somewhat reasonable. So the product types, the single-family homes range anywhere from 1,300 to 1,900 square feet. Price point would be somewhere between 150 and 200. The market is severely undersupplied. I mean, if you listen to the Moore report or the Metro study, any of these housing reports, or talk to a real estate agent, the market even, is, I mean, houses are selling very, very quickly. With all the growth moving here with the pharmaceuticals and Apex and Cary being built out, I mean, it is all coming this way. So what we have found is that market is very price point driven. And so we build a very quality house in that price point, and we try to meet that to provide value to the homeowners. The multifamily triplex is no different than the single-family houses with a shared wall, same floor plans. We just do that to increase density in case we need to lower the price point, and they're a little cheaper to build from a cost standpoint. It's just a different type of marketing strategy. The multifamily townhomes have been shown. That's where they're going. So, I mean, they've been shown, and that's where they're going. So that provides our multi-use from a single-family dwelling standpoint. As you can see, we've tried to provide a lot of open space. In Parkview, that was our kind of our development style. A lot of these homes, if you notice, don't back up to other homes. There's a green, the majority there's a green system of open space running before they back up to another home. We build in a lot of developments where we get a lot of feedback that the houses are back to back and there's just not a lot of room there. So a lot of open space, a lot of area towards the river. This will also be a maintenance-free neighborhood. There will be an HOA established. That is something that's in our niche as well. We have HOAs all across Johnson County. The reason we do that is these are a little smaller houses with the higher density and everything. We want the neighborhood to look good. We want the property values not only to go where they are, but then once we start building, we want to try to stretch those property values because that will lift up the whole market, which we have seen in City Road and Parkview. We've lifted the appraisal values and lifted the market. So maintenance free is huge. You basically leverage a mass population in economies of scale to then create one contract where you sub out the grass maintenance, the mulching, the trimming, and things like that, and then everybody has a uniform yard. So with the smaller type housing, when people walk in, you don't have that one neighbor who has just let their yard go to you know what. So keeps everything uniform. It's disclosed up front. It's in all the documents. They know that that's part of the HOA, so they know that's what they're buying in for. And a lot of times people want to buy into that. So the trail system also stylistically in our developments is a big part. It's hard to see up there, but there are trails littered all through this plan. In through the green spaces and out in the back. We do plan when the Mountain to Sea Trail comes through here to work with your staff that it connects either in the back or in the front, that we participate in that, and would love for that to be a part of the town strategy. We also believe that this neighborhood will be a benefit for the town. We've told staff we're excited about doing this big development in downtown Smithfield. We're excited to brand it a Smithfield development, for it to feel like a Smithfield development, like a downtown Smithfield development. We've done that in Clayton with our developments there. We've donated money to the Cooper School District. We sponsor all of the Clayton Concert Series events, Christmas tree lighting. I mean, we are going to partner with the town just like we have in Clayton. Our goal is that this is kind of a catapult for us into this market to, really brand Smithfield, and that this neighborhood is partnering with Smithfield and is a good thing. We also think this will provide a good tax base for the town of Smithfield. We estimate the tax basis that built out will be somewhere between $40 and $50 million worth of tax basis. We made the same argument to Clayton, and that's a compelling argument. These residents will need to be serviced, and they will supply a tax basis to do that. As for the objections to the conditions, we do object to a few. Some of which we feel a little bit more passionately about, which I will communicate. Some of which we feel like is y'all's call as a council. The first and probably most important condition we object to is number 4, that the additional East and West Street be incorporated into the site plan, which is the arrow that you see through the middle. It's an age-old debate between developers and planning. Dating back to Headingham, Riverwood, a lot of developments we've done in the past. Developers want to try to create a sense of neighborhood, a sense of community, to keep things where people know the cars that are driving in their neighborhood. They know who's going to be there. They get their kids to play in the street. They understand less roads, more open space, and all that. It is a delicate balance when you go to a plan like this, but it is something that needs to be protected. So we feel that we have met the requirement. We feel the requirement is somewhat gray, and staff's interpretation on this one is somewhat gray. We feel like we have broken up this area with the pedestrian walkways that run straight through the middle of these areas. We're not opposed to working on staffs for ways to make that more attractive and to be more of an amenity for the community. But to run a street straight through the middle of this development would add additional traffic, additional, chances for cars instead of on the main areas, take away open space, but more importantly, would take away lots and be additional linear foot of street that would need to be built that would severely affect the feasibility of this project. So I want to clearly communicate that, and that's the main reason we object to that. The fifth condition is the lateral connection, the connectivity to the two property owners. At the end of the day, that's y'all's call. We feel like this is a neighborhood. It needs to be contained. People need to know who's in their neighborhood. They don't need strangers driving through their neighborhood. They don't need to worry any more about their kids playing in the street, because I guarantee you they will, than any more cars than they have to be concerned with. Also, from a safety standpoint, we believe that crime is reduced in neighborhoods that have more of a one-way in, one-way out style neighborhood. If a crime is committed in the back of this neighborhood, when police come in, there's nowhere for them to go. There's one way in and basically one way in, one way out. If we add arteries to the neighborhood to allow for additional traffic, crime, we believe statistically crime rate goes up because there's easier ways. Criminals are more inclined to prey on those areas because they know there's multiple ways to get in and out. They're less likely to come into an area like this where they know they can't get out if they commit a crime deeper into the subdivision. But at the end of the day, we feel that it's the council's decision what type of neighborhoods that this town needs to have. Is this, a big town like Boston or Raleigh, or is this, a Johnson County town like Smithfield? We believe it needs to be more neighborhood centric and not more connected. Because being born and raised here, our style and development feels like that's more of where we need to lean. But this is, as we've talked with staff, is probably going to set a precedent. So y'all really need to talk through that and think through, the town you want to have, and with the connectivity and all that. That is not as crucial of an objection. We do want to object to it because we disagree with it philosophically, but that is not as big of an issue as the center road. The sixth condition is the public sidewalks. We just want to make sure the condition does not state specifically, the planner said it, but does not state either or, and we just would like for that to be amended that it's a sidewalk or trail, because our plan does show a trail but not necessarily a sidewalk. We just want to make sure that's very clear. And then the eighth, which is the PUD master plan to be updated. Again, we think that's being way overplayed. We've had developments approved in the past with that type of flexibility on product, knowing that it comes back to staff, knowing that we're going to work through those details with staff, that it's really not that big of a deal. But I think staff is very sensitive to that and feels important to bring to y'all's attention. At the end of the day, we're excited about this neighborhood. We're excited about hopefully bringing, somewhere around 300 residents to the town of Smithfield and the economic growth and activity that it will bring, and hope y'all feel the same, and we'll support it. And I'm available to answer any questions y'all have about the plan.
Mayor, I have a couple of questions. Sure. Mr. Smith, I too agree that this is a great plan and something our town needs. I did have a couple of questions. The utilities, would that be underground for your power? Were we all thinking, have you got that far in your concept?
I don't think we've gotten that far in the concept. Most of the utilities, stormwater, and everything, like the planner said, would be dealt with as the process goes on from here.
And I understand your objection to number 4, the east and west corridor. And I just want to make sure that we understand that that's going to be a walking trail, so it will be access across the property.
That's correct, but I think staff is proposing that we actually build a road there.
Okay, understood. But the trail will give access across.
That's correct. We believe that the pedestrian connectivity breaks that up, which meets the code.
Would that be a paved area?
That's correct.
10 foot wide.
10 foot wide.
So if emergency vehicles or whatever needed to go down through there, that would not be a problem?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Mr. Smith, also, can you kind of give us an idea, and I see the objection number 8, and I too see the plan, you've got the townhomes, and you're not sure where you may put the 3-type house.
That's correct.
But my question to you is, just for understanding, and for the citizens that are here, what phase would you plan to start first, second, or third?
That's a great question. So I think we would build it kind of as the phasing is proposed, so phase 1 and 2 up front. And our initial intent would not to be to build any of those in that interior first phase. We would go in with a single family product, just like we did at Parkview, and to see what the market conditions told us once we went to market. The more appropriate place for that type of product, which we have explained to staff, would be in some of the cul-de-sac areas where it could be stacked in, or in a run. So a prime example would be in phase 4 and 3, which is basically the center run, where you could have single family on the exterior and a run of those townhomes in the middle. So, I mean, or a run in the back. We wouldn't want to mix it. We would want to have it a consistent area or consistent run of that product.
The last question I have is, it may be here and I didn't see it. Would the streets have curb and gutter, or would they not?
I believe they're cover and gutter, yes, sir. And the sidewalk plan in Clayton, we were only required to have sidewalk on one side of the street. And we went with that and just said it just doesn't look right. So we ended up putting sidewalk on both sides of the street. The streetscape is huge for the marketability of a neighborhood like this. And even though it costs more money, we felt like we got that back in the marketability and how people like the product.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Smith at this time?
Reed, have you had the Mountain Sea Trail issue before?
We've installed a lot of the Mountain to Sea Trail. We've installed Mountain to Sea Trail in Riverwood, Parkview, Ashcroft.
How do you get them to tell you where to put it?
We work with staff. I mean, that's part of the.
That'd be done as part of the process.
Absolutely. I mean, that's part of.
It wouldn't come up.
That's part of the
later.
fun.
It wouldn't come up later where they want it on the front, you've got a house.
No, sir. I mean, we've dedicated, as you see, the green lines in the back and the trail in the front. And so, I mean, we're going to put that in, and then how this town wants to route that trail and use those trails is, something we'll work on together.
But the Mountain Sea Trail is a state line.
I'm not sure of the state. Most of what we've dealt with has been with the city, and then what they do with that trail from there is up to them. Whether they dedicate it to the state or keep it to maintain. I believe in Clayton, they've chose to keep their trails and maintain their trails. But it is still branded as the Mountain to Sea Trail.
Question for you, have you had any, not that we would want this to happen, of course, but have you had any fires in neighborhoods like this? My concern because of density, that was be my.
Yeah, so we have that debate kind of internally all the time, and fire or catastrophic event. I'll give you an example. Riverwood, one of our biggest developments, 1,500 rooftops, and only has 3 ways in on the same road on Pritchard Road. And it goes back many, a long way. To my knowledge, and Donnie, keeps track of that, my engineer, a lot better than I do, there's never been a catastrophic event in Riverwood in the 20 years that they've been there where fire trucks couldn't get in, or there was an issue, or citizens couldn't get out, or anything like that, that I can speak to. But I can tell you Riverwood is one of the safest neighborhoods in Johnston County.
I was more referring to the actual burning of the building.
That's what I'm saying.
And the building beside it
I-
because of density. That's what I'm not,
I mean,
not in and outside.
Yeah, we have not experienced that, but there are certain, concepts of that in the code that we have to require to, as far as building separation, access to the neighborhood and all that, and we've met all those requirements.
The other question I would have is, so the design that you have here, like I said, you said it's similar to one in, you said Parkview in Clayton.
Yes, sir.
But the density and all that you have here, is that similar to the most of the other ones that you built?
Pretty
And
much.
the ones that we see built throughout Wake County and all that stuff, I see lots of pretty dense
Yeah,
development.
and a lot of those developments go up. I mean, a lot of the density goes in the air. Most of our developments, like in Parkview, Riverwood, Ashcroft, it is high dense. And that's kind of, you want the higher density in the towns, and then as you get out in the county, more acreage and more estate style houses and things like that, so that the services are concentrated.
Any other questions? Mr. Smith, are you, as far as utilities and so forth, are you going to ask the town to assist with the utilities? As far as
I'll let Donnie speak to that if you need a
Sure.
detailed answer.
Yeah,
He may want you to clarify that a little bit.
yeah. I'm talking, will it be town supplied, electrical and water services?
Yeah.
Just town.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if that being the case, no objections for annexation is where.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
where
yes.
that's where I'm really going with
Yes.
this.
As long as we're approved, we're going to use no objection to annexation.
Okay.
That's kind of the point in us wanting to brand it Smithfield. We want to be a part of Smithfield and brand it Smithfield.
And I just had one other question, because it's very hard, even though I just got new contacts today, and it's very hard for me to see in this agenda package. I'm getting older. First phase, second phase. The first phase is that can you just point out to where those phases are?
This is first phase.
Okay.
Second phase.
Okay, because you had mentioned earlier about the triplexes not being in those phases.
That's right.
And-
More like to run here or concentrated in these cul-de-sacs.
Right, because that would actually be a concern of mine, right? Having them close into the entrance to Buffalo Road there. that would-
If it would help council, we would entertain a condition that limited it to the entrance and not in phase 1 and 2, if that would help ease y'all's minds.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I have one more question. On condition number 2, it does say that you'll submit a request for voluntary annexation. And then it says, if connection to town water and sewer are to be requested with the subdivision. Any objection to adding electricity there as well, if the town can provide it?
No, sir. I don't think so.
Any other questions for Mr. Smith at this time?
And I can come back up if y'all have any in your deliberation.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Anyone in the audience wish to speak on this matter, please come forward. If you will, please state your name and address for the record.
My name's John Twisdale Jr. My family and I own property on both the north and south side of this parcel. 2117 on the north side and 1755 Buffalo Road on the south side. So, thank you for your opportunity to comment and to speak. I guess I would like the council to further consider a few items that have been touched on, and I'll just start with the first one here. I would ask, has the council considered the impact of that the additional 300 residential units will have on the turning and through movements at the intersection of Buffalo Road and Bookadary Road, which are most likely already at capacity especially when school is in session. And what I'm talking about here is the morning commute and the evening commute in and out of the town of Smithfield. So along those same lines, I would ask that the council further consider, asking for a traffic study to be completed to determine the overall impact of the potential development. Also, I would ask that the council put additional thought into the existing capacity of the existing sewer line that was installed along Buffalo Road in 1982. So it's been there for some time, and I believe the primary purpose of that sewer line at that time was to transfer sewage from the town of Selma to the town of Smithfield. So, there are concerns in those regards. If the remaining capacity is fully utilized by this proposed development, this would potentially present an unfair financial hardship on all of the remaining undeveloped properties if they are developed at some point in the future. So I would ask the council to put some thought into that and what would be the solution in those regards. Also, I guess, has the council confirmed or determined if the potential developer has achieved verification of all jurisdictional wetlands and streams from the Corps of Engineers? In addition to that, has the potential developer fully evaluated the pre versus post conditions for all of the proposed storm drainage outlets to ensure that pre-conditions are maintained? And I believe it was mentioned that this is a WS4 overlay here because we're very close to the intake for the town of Smithfield's water supply. And lastly, I would like to suggest that the council continue to regulate growth in a manner that makes the town of Smithfield, which is our home, more desirable to future residents. And the primary question that all of us should ask ourselves is, would we desire to live with our neighbor's home within 20 feet or less of your home, or would you rather live on at least a half-acre lot or better, as most of our fellow residents currently do? So with that, I think Smithfield, is growing, and that's important. But the density of this proposed development, is that what the town of Smithfield really needs? I mean, you're talking about 300 homes, you're talking about at least 2 vehicles per household, and you're talking about a lot of inexperienced young drivers that go to each one of the schools, the high school, each and every day, each and every morning. And if you travel Buffalo Road in the early AM hours, and you travel in the evening, I know that it's going to be widened, and that's much needed. But still, you've got a lot of inexperienced young drivers that go to our high school each and every day. And, young drivers are not what they used to be when we were all learning. So, there are a lot of unfortunate deaths, with the young drivers in our state. So with that, I just would really ask that the council really put a lot of thought into what happens to this large parcel here. I think it's a great opportunity for the town of Smithfield to grow, but I would ask that the town council and the mayor really consider what size of lots are here and what size of homes should go here. With that, if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. I do appreciate the opportunity to speak.
John, I would just say that, I know you probably don't have this material, but traffic impact study is condition number 1.
Right.
And I'm going to ask Mr. Ted Cradle in a minute to talk about the sewer.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience? You will please state your name and address for the record. Ms. Dale?
Tucker Twisdale, 1755 Buffalo Road. My son basically hit on the points that we think, after having looked at, just like you have, I hope, all of this material. I taught school for quite a few years, and one of the things that always struck me was that we had to be accountable, which means you don't say, okay, we might do this or we might do that, but you had to have a plan that included what you proposed to do, and that plan had to be carried out. The thing that I won't go through and take my 5 pages that I have written down that you have basically had addressed, because it says maybe, could, want flexibility. Those types of words are not words that lead to accountability. I personally have walked that land. It is right in my back door. I haven't heard the first word about any type of buffer. You are looking at a society now where every household has at least 2 vehicles, and I heard reference to 300 people, being there. Are you going to have only one person in each one of those homes? I don't think so. The streets, only 50 feet wide. You've got one garage at most of the places. Where in the world are you going to put the other car? Where are you going to see that there is ample room for the residents there? Now, the water condition is something that needs to very definitely be addressed ahead of time. As I say, we tended that land, and I walked the tobacco rows and stuck up tobacco stalks because of the water problem, drainage. As far as the sewage is concerned, I live there. It doesn't bother me because I'm used to it. But the town of Smithfield constantly has to send somebody out because of backage into the houses of sewage, which creates an awful odor. It happened in my in-laws' house, so I know what I'm talking about. So sewage is very definitely something that needs to be addressed. All I'm asking is that I think that as responsible citizens, I want you to stop and think. Too many conditions will be made, except what you want is a concrete plan that you can go by, something that you can say, okay, this is what you have to do. Not after it's being done or considered, but before it's being done. So I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Twizzo. Anyone else like to speak? Any other questions?
Mayor, Ms. Twisdale's brought up a point about the buffer. Could y'all address that? About the buffer sheet question? Would there be a buffer from the other property?
If you don't mind, come to the microphone because we are recording.
There is a 50-foot buffer shown on the plans and a Class A buffer in that 50-foot area.
Pointer if you want it.
It's detailed out on the plans. You have that, or staff has that.
I'll explain that real briefly. Our UDO has a buffer requirement which spells out the type of plants or the number of plants and the dimensional size of that buffer. They have referenced that UDO requirement on their plans. They haven't detailed it out, but they have spelled out, type A buffer, type B buffer, whatever, on their plans. So in a sense, saying we are going to comply with those buffer requirements in the UDO.
It's just the fact that if any of you've been up down the road, we have cows. have an electric plant, okay? And, you know, you got that many children over there. I just don't want to take that risk.
One thing I would like to add, I mean, we certainly appreciate accountability. We're not afraid of accountability. That's why this process requires us to go back through staff and be held accountable by staff. This process is laid out that this master plan is a guiding document for us to go through this process. If we were to do everything that is kind of being thrown around here, we would spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring this development to you that you may not approve. And then that money would just be wasted. If that were the rules of the game we were playing with, we wouldn't be here at this meeting tonight. So that is the process that is laid before us, is to go through the conceptual plan like we do in many towns in the county, to go through the broad strokes, to then work with staff after the fact to implement the project.
So I have a question then. The question was asked about street parking, because that's an issue for me.
Right.
I don't like that, 'cause especially narrow roads, and then you have people parking on the street. I know you're gonna have an HOA, so I'm assuming that that's part of where you've done.
Yeah.
Is there parking on the streets in?
Yes, so we do have an HOA, and they police parking. I can assure you, I mean, and I've encouraged everybody to go right through Parkview and look at the parking, how it's done. It works well. In fact, again, we're absorbing 70 units annually in that neighborhood. It is not an issue, at least for the people who are living there. We can't build them fast enough for them to buy them, because that is a desired place to live, and the parking is not an issue.
So they don't park on the streets?
Some of them do, and there are rules where you can park on the street. Certain times you can park on the street, but you have to use your garage, you have to use your patio. But let's be realistic. I mean, there's going to be times where you're going to have a birthday party and you can't fill up your garage and your deal, and so we give leniency to that.
So I guess my question would be those, based upon the side of the street and based upon the size of the fire engines. So we look at one of the largest vehicles we'd have go through there is fire engines. So if you have two vehicles parked on the side of the road, would that fire truck have any trouble going through there? That would be my concern, you know, and John's sitting there, so the largest truck you got, could they go through there if you needed to? The trucks you would use in that neighborhood for that type of facility, because you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I believe the answer would be yes, and I believe your code sets the streetscape to where that it takes account for that, and that all of that is the rules of the game of which we're playing.
Okay, one other question, I'm not sure you might not be the person to answer this, but there's also a question was asked about the traffic flow, but I know we have a street that's going in on Buffalo Road that will offset some of the traffic on Buffalo Road, Kelly Drive.
Yeah, so
It will cut through there, and it will take a lot of that traffic off that intersection. That's one of the main reasons why they're putting it in. So we won't anticipate that. The question is, where does that go in relationship to this division, plans that you're planning? I mean, where is that, you know?
Sure. So a lot of that is stuff that DOT, I mean, that is really in the DOT's jurisdiction. I would not want to put that weight on the town. We've talked with them enough to get to know where our entrances and exits kind of need to be located, but that's part of the very, very, very expensive TIA and working with DOT to make sure they're located exactly where they want them. We've shown the dedicated right-of-ways. We've shown everything they want. As far as, finalizing those details, we will do that with DOT in the process and with staff's support.
Okay, but the point is, there is a road, though, that's going to go, there is a road, we all know Kelly Drive is going to take some of that congestion off that intersection anyway. I mean, we know that.
I do have one other question for you. The question was made about the length of the road. What is, you may not know, but the length of those three roads right now, from north to south, roughly how long?
1,300 square, linear feet.
Okay. Thank you.
We have the sewer issue addressed.
Ted?
Yes, sir.
Councilman Ashley, did you have a question?
Well, I mean, you heard the concern about the sewer. I mean, it's always been my understanding that building permits aren't even issued unless there's sewer capacity.
Yeah, we've received no information on the utilities at this time, so anything I would say would be conjectural. I will tell you that the actual gravity line that is on the west side of Buffalo Road, where they, I assume, would be tying into, is actually a Johnston County line. It's not the town of Smithfield's. So in order for them to be a town customer, we'd have to somehow group or gang it together and put a meter on it, and then that would be worked out between the town and the county. But again, we've received nothing, admittedly so, from the developer or their engineer on utilities at this time, so I really can't comment. Sorry.
So right now, it's not our lines, what you're saying?
The line along Buffalo Road is not our line. Johnston County, we service the individual homes along it, but the line itself is
They're our
Johnston County.
customers.
Yes.
They're our customers, Mr. Wisdale, but we do not own the line. They are Town of Smithfield customers.
But if the development takes place, won't they also be your customers?
Well, that's the part we would work out. That's correct. Yeah. That would be negotiations with the county. Any other questions at this time? If not, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I move we close the public hearing.
Second?
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pleasure of the council.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the zoning as documented here with the exception to conditions number 2, add electricity with water and sewer, and also removal of 4 through 6 and number 8.
Is that a motion? I'll
Yes.
second. Got 2 seconds.
With the item number 5 being in the UDO, do we need an additional,
That's a lateral connection.
do
Next
we need an
slide.
additional?
I would like direction
part of
from the council, since I'm in charge, whether or not these conditions here, I'm charged to enforce the UDO. I would like specific requirement that condition is, that requirement is waived for lateral connections, if that's what you're trying to waive, so that I have clear instruction when I'm
Wouldn't that be a
reviewing.
different motion though? As opposed to the issue before us?
It could be a separate motion.
Yeah, at the time when it comes back before us.
At the preliminary plat, well,
It would need to be made now, or they wouldn't be able to go ahead with their plans.
We can make
Because
a
I'm-
secondary motion.
Yeah, it could be done afterwards, but it still needs to be done at this,
And the planning board addressed 5 and 6 as well, and as far as their recommendations be eliminated.
All right.
Yeah, I have the question about number 8, though. I don't know if I would like to have that removed. I just think it needs to be changed to say at the end of it, to say, as development progresses, the PDMS plan be updated to identify the type and placement of each unit type as on a lot as development progresses, because they said they're going to be coming back to you. So I think that should be a condition that they agree to come back to you. I know you say you are, and everybody's good and everything, but it's nice to have something in the condition. Yes, sir.
they need to, the next step in the process, I want to clarify, this is the master plan, and as they prepare their preliminary plat, they'll be preliminary platting the whole site. And then if what they're asking for is saying that as they preliminary plat, then they start building their phase 1, and then they'll come back and final plat that. So between preliminary plat and final plat, they will make decisions whether to go additional density. And so it's at the final plat. Yeah, I suppose you're right, because it's a different process here, but, yeah, they probably would have to come up with a schematic prior to building for staff approval for that density. You're right.
So it would be good if we kept 8 in there, but changed the ending to say, as development progresses.
Well, I thought they were gonna have to come back to us for each phase anyway.
They are.
Yeah, please. Go ahead.
For preliminary, for final plat, they're gonna final plat it by phase.
In phases.
So we are thinking they're preliminary platting according to what you guys approve at preliminary plat, but if at some point after preliminary plat, they want to exercise that flexibility and add density, that would happen between preliminary and final,
I believe the applicant stated that they would be fine with not putting that.
Yeah, so maybe we fundamentally disagree with the process, but our experience and what our understanding of the process is when we decide, we get our entitlement, we decide to go build phase one. When we turn in our construction drawings, we will go through constructions, utilities, planning will have comments, like we go through it, and before we dig the first rock out of the ground, that has all gone through an approval process. Clearly, we cannot wait till the final plat to work these things out. That is not what we were proposing. What we were proposing is to do it during the construction drawing and permitting phase with staff, so before we start construction, we're good, then we go build, and then the plat recordation is a piece of cake.
So, to address his concern, we can amend the motion to include no triplexes or the duplexes, townhomes in the first or second phase.
Yeah, we would consent to that part of the condition, that no triplexes be in the first and second phase near the entrances, given the traffic concerns.
May I make that recommendation to amend the motion?
Okay, who seconded? Is that you? Okay. You okay with that? Yeah. We have a motion and a second to amend the motion.
So can we tell me which ones that I know we modified number 2.
Modified
To
to
include-
electricity.
Yep, I got that. And then you've eliminated then 4, 5, 6,
And 8.
and 8.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Look forward to doing some business with you. Okay, gentlemen, we will move on to the next public hearing. This, again, is not a quasi-judicial hearing, therefore there will be no need for anyone to be sworn in. Public hearing ZA-18-02, Town of Smithfield. Smithfield Planning Department is requesting to adopt the flood risk insurance study for Johnston County and to amend the Town of Smithfield UDO Article 10, flood damage prevention, non-coastal regular phase, as required by the study. I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
Make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Staff, let's go to the next one here. The purpose of the amendment is to comply with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, the revised flood insurance study. It's an update of the UDO with mandatory changes brought by the flood insurance study, and adopting the insurance study is both adopting the flood maps and the model ordinance. Flood risk information system, this is just the website. All the study material is here, the maps, everything's located on the official website. This is Smithfield within the study area. So this map is an exhibit of what shows what we're approving. It's revisions to essentially the 100-year flood area and the 500-year flood area. Flood maps are an essential part of the study. So these are amended from our previous set. This has been a several-year process. We had preliminary plans out maybe 6-8 months ago, and we've got these, and the whole update needs to be approved by June, or we're out of compliance with FEMA. So an analysis of the flood map. Roughly 1,200 properties in the town of Smithfield are affected by the special flood hazard areas. Sandy Run and surrounding areas have roughly 86 properties and 66 structures which are being removed from the 100-year floodplain. The flood insurance study now includes a detailed study area of Buffalo Creek from Brightleaf to US 70 bypass. Spring Branch 100-year flood and floodway is smaller. The Neuse River floodway appears to have increased in area in places. A lot of the changes have to do with the meandering of the Neuse River. The changes that we have in our proposed ordinance, I think you guys got a colored copy with various colors. This is a reflection of the model ordinance we were given from FEMA. They had color coordinated based on whether it's blue, changes from 2007 to 17's version, green being new additions since 2007, or with the 2017 version, and red, items that are deleted from the 2017 version. And we reflected our recommendations in a color code for your understanding tonight, for your review. And I hope that was understood in your review of the ordinance that was sent in your packet. I'm going to give you a summary of the mandatory versus voluntary changes to the ordinance. There's a whole list here of mandatory. I guess I prefer not to go through them all unless you would like me to, for expediency. But I did want to point out some voluntary options. The biggest ones are, right now, we allow filling in the 100-year floodplain. There is an option to prohibit filling in the 100-year floodplain. We've opted for the status quo, which is continuing to allow filling in the 100-year floodplain, consistent with FEMA regulations. And it's also, I want to point out, all of our recommendations are consistent with how the county is treating their floodplain update, because we wanted to be as in compliance as possible because we share building inspection. The other biggest decision point is whether we maintain the 2-foot freeboard or opt for a greater freeboard, let's say 3 feet from the flood elevation. Our current ordinance is 2 feet. We're continuing to recommend 2 feet. I just want to point those two different items out. I think those are the biggest impacts that we could have, is either the status quo or making our code more protective against flood. Okay, any questions on that? Okay. Staff finds the flood insurance study for Johnson County consistent with the plans. We find the ordinance reasonable, and we're recommending adoption. We feel it is in the best interest for the public safety of the community. So we find it consistent with our plans and policies. Staff's recommending you hold this public hearing, deliberate on the application at hand, and make a decision tonight, and adopt a consistency statement in support of the amendment. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Questions, or do I have a motion?
I move
Oh,
we-
I gotta close public hearing.
I move we close the public hearing.
Second.
Anyone in the audience wish to speak for or against on this matter? Okay. I have a motion and a second.
Before we begin, I just got a comment, real quick comment, just looking at, especially over in the East Smithfield area, Sandy Run, and the surrounding areas, all of a sudden are gonna be, removed. I'm talking to some residents, I know over the last however many years, they've had to have build houses, timber out in the air. They couldn't take out loans or whatever because they're in this floodplain to remodel their house or do whatever. And now all of a sudden, and if you look at the area over there anyway, because nobody's building over there, now this is all of a sudden it's being removed. So it's just, the timing is just kind of ironic to me. I'm just gonna leave it as that.
All right. Have a
Well, the impact, has the impact of these changes been fully briefed to the citizenry? Could this be very harmful to the citizens out there?
Well, there's winners and losers. Some people, like you said, some people that were subject to the requirements for the last however long these old maps were in place, they had to take out insurance, and they had to build high, and if they've been removed from the the flood area. Now they're free to build like anybody else. They don't have to worry about 2 foot above the floodplain because they're not in the floodplain anymore. They're not in a 100-year flood. Other properties are going to be added to the floodplain, and it's going to impact them more. But if we don't adopt this model ordinance, or our changes to it, which is consistent with the model ordinance, if we don't adopt them, no one in town will be able to get FEMA flood insurance. And we need to adopt this update before June to be included in their program. And so everything but the voluntary changes, we had options, and we've opted to make as little change as possible with the voluntary pieces and have adopted all the mandatory requirements as recommended by the ordinance. So, this was a study that was a multi-year study. I couldn't begin to tell you hardly anything about how they modeled this whole area, but it was a multi-year study and probably addressing previous years of flooding and people who were impacted who were not in the floodplain, which probably prompted the study.
So the study was done by FEMA. They're the ones
Correct.
that did it, and they're the ones that made mandatory changes. So really,
That's
we don't
right.
have a choice on mandatory change. We like it or not, you really don't have a choice when it's mandatory in the feds. They pretty much
If
will
we
take
want
it.
insurance, if we want to be in the
Yeah.
insurance program, we need to adopt the changes. There are some voluntary changes, and that's why I want to point out, the
Right.
biggest ones are whether we allow filling in the 100-year floodplain. That's a big one. And the other one is how high above the 100-year flood are we going to require people to elevate to? Right now, it's 2 feet, and we're recommending 2 feet.
Did we enforce that 2 feet on some of the rebuilds that went on after the Matthew flooding?
My understanding is we do. The county does our building inspection, so they're the ones that would carry out that. And
I can tell you that we did, and a lot of people were not happy that we did. And that would be one problem with going to 3 feet. Now all these people that have met the 2 foot requirement, if they're flooded again, they'd have to build to 3 feet if we change it to 3 feet.
I certainly understand that we need to do this. I'm just sitting there thinking that there may be some residents who go to bed tonight clueless and wake up tomorrow and realize that they've got a real problem, but I guess they have that problem anyway.
some,
There's not a lot of latitude here.
I guess the focus I would have if I were a councilman is to look at the voluntary options. And if you agree with staff's recommendation, or if there's something you specifically want to change in the ordinance, that's probably where to focus your efforts if you're reviewing it and want to be, critique what's before you tonight.
Can you put those voluntary ones back?
Yeah, we'll go back to that.
Let's read.
And this is a summary, it's not all of them, but they're color-coded in your ordinance in green, I think.
Any other questions? All right, I think I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing.
We already closed.
Did we close it? No, we didn't close it. We didn't ever close it. We have a motion and a second to close it.
Yeah, we haven't voted.
All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. What's the pleasure of the council?
I moved that we approved it.
I have a second to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And that motion included, I guess, the consistency statement as well as was that, that's all we were doing, a consistency statement?
Correct.
Mayor, before we move on, back to business, item number 1, or actually it's public hearing. The staff had a question about number 5, possibly needed a second motion. I was going to ask him if he could speak on that, about the adjoining properties, lateral connections.
Yeah. Could you speak as to the requirement, council making a
Yeah, if you
motion
recall
on-
that diagram I had in the presentation, that's an illustration we have right in our UDO that says how, it's a formula in how you would determine how many lateral connections are required. So lateral connections are required in the code, which is supported by our comp plan. And so the conditions on the approval were to essentially to raise the issues so you guys understood the importance of these things that were not necessarily shown in the plans but are requirements, so the deficiencies in the plan, and also to in this case it's a requirement whether it's a condition of approval or not. So I would need specific instruction from the council, direction from the council as the administrator of the UDO to not enforce that requirement with this development.
Basically waive the requirement that exists in the UTO.
The lateral connection on that master plan just really does not make that much sense to me. You're creating an additional traffic, an additional traffic flow. You're creating a figure 8. It's not an additional access to Buffalo Road, as I saw it. It's just creating a cutover where a 10-foot wide sidewalk will exist for emergency vehicles.
We're talking about the lateral transfers out of the subdivision, so it'd be stubbed out for other subdivisions to connect to, not the one in the middle.
Oh, okay.
The one in the middle is not a
I
problem.
was mistaken.
It's the ones on the outside.
I thought it was the one that cut across.
No,
Okay.
the ones on the outside are a UDO requirement, so all we need is a motion and a vote from the council to waive that requirement so we can move forward.
I move we waive that requirement so we can move forward.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to waive requirement number 5 as it exists in the UDO. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Does that give you the direction you
Yes, it
need,
does.
sir?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, we will move on to public hearing number 3. It's ZA-17-06, Town of Smithfield. Planning Department is requesting an ordinance amendment to Appendix A, Article 7 and Article 10, the Town of Smithfield UDO ordinance to clarify minimum lot width standards and the maximum length of cul-de-sacs. I have a motion to open the public hearing. So be it.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
All right. This ordinance amendment is really part of a continual review of our existing UDO. The UDO actually codifies a quarterly review of the UDO to keep it up to date since our old one stagnated and hadn't been updated for years. And this is going to be a continual process as we find time on planning board and council agendas. And so this was a couple of the first issues I encountered under the UDO and made note of it and found time to bring it forward. And so I'm bringing it to your attention tonight and try to walk you through it. The issues are, I'm told to say it's not flag lots, but it's flag lots in North Carolina. So I've been corrected. Right, guys?
In Iowa, too.
Yeah, so. All right, so the purpose of the amendment is to create a more descriptive definition of flag lot, to eliminate inconsistencies in the UDO, to establish flag lot width that can accommodate standard public right-of-way and not hinder future development, and I'll get back to that one, and to revise the cul-de-sac lengths to be consistent throughout the UDO. So this is what a flag lot is. It's a undeveloped parcel behind a bunch of developed parcels, essentially, with typically without standard frontage requirements. It's accessed by a private drive typically, and there are pros and cons, which I spelled out in your staff report. Some people love them, some people don't. If you want to develop the interior of this space as a, kind of an urban area, you probably don't like it too much because now you don't have the width to bring a public street in to service it with town utilities. And so you're kind of stuck with this large, low-density development in the middle of a higher-density area. If you own that and you want to live in a rural setting behind a bunch of urban lots, you like it. But it does kind of limit future development because you don't have standard lot widths on a public street, and you can't bring that public street in to provide that lot width. So issues with flag lots are burden of maintaining long driveways, difficult access for emergency service vehicles, expensive to service with municipal utilities. You can't just run all that distance. You can't front it with lots. Flags are often shared between multiple landowners, so there's often property issues, maintenance issues. Flag lots, front yards are other people's backyards, so there's kind of, how you define what can go where. Perceived benefits include recognizing environmental and economic advantages of accessing land with long private drives, which might be expensive to serve with public infrastructure. So our existing definition is basically codifying its lack of normal lot frontage. And since my recommendation is we wanted to have a normal lot frontage, we think that this definition doesn't work with my recommendations. So instead, I'm describing what a flag lot actually looks like rather than defining its exceptionality, saying it's two parts, the flag and the pole, and describing them. And then the details are elsewhere in the code. So existing definition of a flag lot is really, really confusing. The distance between straight lines of connecting, I think what I'm missing here is, this is the existing definition of the amount of frontage at the end of the flagpole, how much lot width should be there. I'm proposing, that was the lot width definition for flag lots. So here I'm clarifying it that the strip that joins the main portion of the lot, where that horizontal area is, shall not be less than 60 feet, meaning you always have to have the minimum right-of-way to put a public street in at a minimum, or 80% of the required lot width. So therefore, we're maintaining that ability to put a public street in the future, whichever is greater. And then getting rid of this exception at the end, which isn't again consistent, except where the case of the turning circle of a cul-de-sac, and I addressed that elsewhere. Design standards, so this is where we kind of address what was in the definition. So this is our existing flag-shaped lots shall only be permitted in cases where the minimum area, lot depth, street frontage requirements of this ordinance can be complied with. And then stricter may govern. So what I'm saying is the flag-shaped lots shall be permitted in cases where the minimum lot width, depth of this ordinance are complied with, and the lot has a minimum street frontage of at least 60 feet in width. So I'm just clarifying things, putting the requirements where they belong, not in the definition. Okay? Existing streets, every lot shall have 25 feet on one of the following. I'm getting rid of that requirement for 25 feet because that's inconsistent with my new definitions. Now, existing lot width and depth, the change would be, they shall have the minimum street width and street frontage as required in Article 8. So rather than creating a new place in the code with a requirement, I'm referring back to where it already exists. Again, relieving the possibility of future inconsistencies, having the requirement in one place. But here's where I'm putting that exception for turning circle of a cul-de-sac. Here, of course, in a cul-de-sac, you have to have lesser lot frontage on the street to make that radius. So this is where it's appropriate to put it in the definition. And then again, using 25 feet is permissible. Under existing supplemental regulations for cluster subdivisions, the lot width is 40 feet. And then it says, on a case-by-case basis, flag lots may be allowed with a minimum street frontage of 10 feet. There's no criteria as to when it's allowed and when it's not. It's sort of like who gets to decide. It puts a lot of objectivity on a planner, or it's better to have standards. Or better yet, just say they have to be 40 feet, and we're requiring they have 60 feet on the street. So there's no gray area anymore. This is just what it is. Okay? So getting rid of that exception. For clustering, they created that exception to allow lots set back from the street on a flag, but I think it's inconsistent with future development. And then getting to cul-de-sac streets, we have 3 different cul-de-sac lengths in our code. I'm trying to create a consistency.
Where are you going to allow flag lots?
I think they're allowed, wherever they're allowed now, they're allowed as long as they meet these standards. I don't know if it's just in the R20A. I'd have to review that. But we're not changing where they're allowed. We're just changing the requirements for what they can look like.
Stephen, was this just your general review of the UDO, or is there something come up with these?
This started with my review of conflicts in the UDO. I had a review, and when Steve Medlin was first here, there were a number of conflicting points in the code with this flag lot, and we didn't really know which standard applied. So that was the first checklist, and then the other one was cul-de-sac lengths. I knew this. It became very apparent to me that which standard do I use? We had engineering standards, we have manufactured home cul-de-sac length standards, and we have everybody else standards. And so cul-de-sac lengths, I went with the most liberal, which is 750 feet. Checked with the fire department to see if they have any problem fighting a fire on a cul-de-sac if the roads were blocked off. They said don't have an issue with fighting a fire at 750 feet. It's sort of right in the middle of where a lot of cities go. Some are requiring shorter, some longer. It's sort of on the average of what's typically required.
So they can be less, though, right?
They can, we could require, yeah, you can go less.
This
is
doesn't
the max.
exceed, where we had 600, it doesn't exceed 750, correct?
Right.
Okay. Any other changes?
No.
On this? All right, because I got council members, I think, we're getting ready to start pulling our shirts off.
I'm sorry, it's very detailed and it's hard to explain.
Councilman Scott's got his pants rolled up over here. It's getting kind of hot right behind this glass fence. So
It's people who want to develop you're gonna hear from them. You've taken away their right to develop, or you've given them more opportunities. So it's kind of important with the flag lots in particular. So.
any questions?
I just have one question. My one question is, I don't know, I haven't memorized the UDO. So my question is about manufactured mobile home parks. I think it was mentioned before. Are we allowing, I thought we're not allowing any mobile homes in the city, in the town of Smithfield. So are we allowing manufactured mobile home parks, manufactured home parks? Because that's what it says here, and so there's a specification about that. My question to you is that if we're not allowing that, then should that not be removed completely from this UDO if we're not allowing it?
That'll be my next thing to study, if that's inconsistent or not. I didn't get there. I just researched cul-de-sac lengths, and we have a set of standards in Chapter 7 about, for manufactured homes, the length of cul-de-sacs.
So you are correct as far as mobile homes. Manufacturing homes are allowed, and they're actually allowed by general statute.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think we can.
Thanks for that distinction.
I was just gonna say that the flag lots have been widely used in the county.
They are.
And they have helped with a lot of development. And I can see where we don't need to allow them in town, but this UDO amendment will affect the ETJ.
It's, people who want to develop and they only have a 10-foot access, they're only going to be able to, they won't be able to create a new flag lot with a 10-foot access. And they won't be happy. But those that have a 60-foot access and later choose to develop in an urban way, they have an opportunity. So there's winners and losers, and I wanted to make that clear with you that this is a substantial change to how we would process new flag lots. And, the planning board was on board. The planning board was okay with this. They recommended approval. And so we're asking for the same from you tonight. Just want to make sure you understand it.
Any other questions from the council? Anyone in the audience wishing to speak on this matter? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Move to close it.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Public hearing is closed. What's the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion, we approve.
Got a motion to approve the amendment?
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? All right, motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Abstain.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now we'll come to citizens' comments. If there's anyone wishing to speak during citizens' comments, please come forward at this time. If you will, please state your name and address.
My name's Matthew Clancy, and the address is 320 Dogwood Street in town. The purpose of me being here this evening is my wife Renee and I, who's in the back, bought a home in town last year, and it's right on Dogwood Street in the Pine Acres section of town. There's a fence, a white PVC fence that comes down on the U-turn coming out of the outlets as you approach the traffic light with the sheets and the Golden Corral right in front of you. I understand that the premise for putting that fence up initially was to provide some privacy, as well as maybe mitigate some of the sound coming out for that U-turn. When this was developed, the house that we bought was vacant because the gentleman that bought it, it was fallen into disrepair, and he flipped it, and it took quite a while to flip the house to get it to where its current condition, right? So the fencing ends right in my next door neighbor's property line. Now, there's a number of reasons that I have concerns with the fencing stopping there as opposed to continuing on maybe another 100 feet or so. The U-turn, where you can swing around and not go through the entire jug handle, right, is directly lined up with the back side of our house, right? So I've got not only the traffic coming this way that the privacy fence all my neighbors get to enjoy, right? But I've also got the people coming right through the U-turn, coming right towards our house, right? In addition to that, my wife works from home, and I'm retired, so I have occasion to run out and do errands and whatnot, but I've seen a number of different people cutting through our property to get out to the outlets and vice versa. While I can sympathize with the fact that by doing so, I'm sure it probably cuts 15, 20 minutes off of their walk to get from Pine Acres out to the outlets, as a husband, it gives me a great deal of concern that I've got strange men walking through my property to get to and from the outlets. So I'm hoping that with the council and the town's approval, that maybe we can put our thinking caps on and come up with some kind of a solution that we can all live with. Because the way I see it, if we were to just extend the fence in its current condition, maybe another 100, 120 feet, that's going to make it very undesirable for people to want to cut through my property. It's going to cut off the U-turn that's shining directly into our house. And another thing that I've noticed from being here since July, as the people come around the jug handle, they got the red light looking right at them, right? So what happens is they come out of the jug handle and they think that they're going to make this green light. I happen to know different, you know, but doesn't stop them from mashing their gas pedal and trying to get to that before it turns red, and they lose every time. But this is what we hear. Oh, because everybody's got an aftermarket exhaust on their truck down here. Right? So you know what I'm talking about. So if the town could find its way to helping us resolve this, we'd appreciate it. Now, I had spoken to Mr. Scott about this at a function in town, and he had asked me if it would be possible for us to put out the money for a fence in our property. And quite frankly, I mean, we just bought the house last year. We've been making steady improvements to it, and we've got some standing water issues in our backyard that need to be addressed before we can really would even be in a position to do anything about a fence. If that had not been the case, then we would have certainly been amenable to that idea. But right now, when it rains, we've got a lot of water in our yard, so that doesn't appear to be an option for us. So if the town could find it in its heart to continue that fence by another 100, 120 feet, we'd sure be appreciative. Thank you very much, and good evening.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak this time? Okay. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move we approve the consent agenda.
Second. Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We'll move on to business items. Business item number 1 is consideration and approval of ordinance number 494 to amend Chapter 6 cemeteries to allow, how do you say that? Columbarium. In Riverside Extension Cemetery, page 211 in your agenda package.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Manager, Town Council. The Public Works Department was recently approached by a family and received our first request for a columbarium in Riverside Extension Cemetery. Before I gave an answer on what they could and couldn't do, I just revisited the cemetery ordinance, and during my investigation of the ordinance, I found a conflict that I wanted to bring before you guys tonight. In the town cemetery ordinance defines mausoleum as a structure or a building used for entombment of human remains. In section 60-50, the ordinance states no private mausoleum shall be constructed or installed in any cemetery. The verbiage in this ordinance, entombment of human remains, can very easily be interpreted as cremation remains when not further clarified. So with this finding, I passed down a denial to the family's request to have the columbariums placed in the cemetery. The families have recently come back before the town and request for revision in the ordinance. The current owners of Riverside Extension Cemetery both agree that they would like to see the columbariums as a burial option in the cemetery. You know, staff has seen a rise in cremations in the last 2 to 3 years, and I don't know if it's based on economy. My stepfather was cremated. We've seen a lot of them. So we agree if that's the direction that council sees fit, then some revisions to the ordinance need to be made. Attached to this paper, to staff's report, we've actually done some revisions to the ordinance that you can see. on page 213 through 220, and it gives definitions such as what a columbarium is and what a niche is. It also puts some verbiage of where the columbariums would be allowed, and they would fall on the same criteria as what an above-ground monument is. An above-ground monument is the actual family monument that's in the middle of the lot of graves. And in order for you to have one of those, you have to own the whole lot of graves, which is either a 4-grave lot or a 6-grave lot. And you'll have this big family monument in the middle with your last name on it. These columbariums now that they're making mimic that same visual aspect. So when you look at it, the cemeteries look uniform. I've visited several cemeteries and seen that some of the cemeteries are going to these things. They actually look really good, and you can't tell the difference of what it is until you actually get up on it and you see the little doors on them. It also it has some verbiage in them what it's allowed. Our ordinance only allows a corpse burial and a cremational burial per grave space. So you can have actually 2 bodies in a grave space, but it has to be either or you can have 2 cremations in each grave space. It's up to the family's preference. So we put a number on what you can do as far as the columbarium. So if you own a 4-grave lot, in this ordinance, it says that you're allowed to have 8 niches on the actual columbarium. So you'll have 8 little doors on your monument where you can put your little niches in for that lot. And if it's a 6-grave lot, then you times that by 2, which gives you the option to have 12 little doors in it. It also complies with the state law of the actual urn that you have to place the cremation remains in, which has to be identified of, who's in it and their date of birth and things such as that. Just in case anything's happened, you can relocate it. And again, in the actual investigation, the owners of the cemetery both agree that they would like to see the columbariums as a burial option in the cemetery. So it's up to you guys. I think we need to do it. I think it's the wave of the future, and I think it will probably be beneficial for a lot of families.
Did I hear you say you could put 2 bodies in one grave space?
Yeah, you can put 1 corpse body in a cremation in each grave space, or you can have 2 cremations per space. So we wanted to make sure, when we done the revisions, we wanted to make sure that we did clarify that that is the maximum that you can have per ordinance for the graves. I think that the revisions, if that's the direction that we go in, are very explanatory and their own cue of what we would need. It even breaks down to the material that they can actually construct it of, which is, it's a stone material, which is marble or granite. They would have to submit a preliminary drawing to the city manager or his assignee to review it within 30 days, and then they would get an approval of, yes, this is allowed per our ordinance to be able to put it on site. And that's to make sure that everything looks uniform in the cemeteries.
How secure are they when you put them in? It says permanent, they have to be put in permanent, so what keeps them secure? I mean, today we have vandalism already. The question is, how secure are they? Because that's a little different than digging up a grave and tearing over a sign.
They're fairly secure. I mean, well, not fairly. They're pretty secure, just like our mausoleum that we actually have in Sunset now. Selma has them already. When they redone their cemetery, they already have those in place, and they're just like little mausoleums is all they are, that house the actual urns for the cremations. And I was pretty much amazed when I went to the other cemeteries when I seen these, because I've never really paid any attention. Like I said, this was our first encounter with the request, and I brought it to the city manager, and he agreed that there is some similarities on where it could be some confusion, and we wanted to make sure that we covered all the bases. So,
I think the Presbyterian Church has a columbarium.
Yes, they do.
Personally, I had my mother died recently, and I was at Parish Funeral Home, and you're sitting there and you're trying to figure out what's nice, put your mom in, and you can, it's like anything, you can spend as much as you want. And I said, well, how much? And of course, my mother already told me you're not cremating me, so we knew that going in. I said, how much are cremations and about how many you do? He said it's about 40% now, and they're $2,500. And pretty much that's cheap, comparatively speaking. So I can see, you know, I don't want to burn twice. I mean, some people do. I don't necessarily want to myself, but I see there's a lot of people. This is kind of way of the future that's doing, because I mean, you can upwards easily start with 10 grand.
I can guarantee the council that this is approved by council. When you do go to the cemetery and look at it, unless you get right up on it, you won't be able to tell the difference from the columbarium from the actual family monument. Because they look the same. They look the same.
Any other questions? So you're actually adding section 6-56, is that what you're adding with the yellow?
All the yellow and the red is.
Yeah, everything that's highlighted. And all it does is it just goes in and gives you it adds the columbarium as a monument option in the cemetery, and it gives you the criteria of what you have to have. You can't own a single grave or a dual grave space, because the cemeteries broke down into 4 grave or 6 grave lots, and council years ago broke those lots down to graves, 2 and 4, and they sold them to 2 different families. You actually have to own the whole lot of graves to be able to put a monument in the middle because of the last name differences. So if you own the whole lot, if council sees fit, you would be able to install a columbarium on the lot of graves. But it does not allow you to sell them. Once they own them, they own them. They can't sell them for a profit. Like I said, the cemetery owners have reviewed this revision, have got back no negative response about it. They like it, and staff feels like if this is the direction that we're going to go in, this is what we need to do. It's up to you guys.
Any other questions for Mr. Branch? If not, do I have a motion?
Make a motion, we. Make a motion to close the public hearing.
This is not
Oh,
it's not public. It's too hot over here.
I apologize. I'll make sure the air conditioner's working next time. I promise you that.
Make a motion we approve. Can we do that?
Approve ordinance 494 to amend the town Smithfield Code of Ordinance, Chapter 6.
Have a motion and a second to approve the amendment as stated in the agenda package. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you,
sir. We'll now move to business item number 2, which is on page 225, I believe, of the agenda package. Consideration and approval to change online bill pay providers. Mr. Seiler?
Mayor, council, well, I'm glad I don't have to talk cemetery plots. But not that mine is any more exciting. There's a lot of points I want to make, but I'll try to be brief as possible. The town of Smithfield added online bill pay as an additional option for utility customers to pay their utility bills. We did that back in 2014, and I believe it was at council's suggestion. That contract worked out better than planned for the customer, in that the company that we did business with did online bill pay as a sideline. Their primary business was debt collection. The laws changed for them. They were told they could not charge the town of Smithfield a convenience fee, or customers a convenience fee, but they honored their 2-year contract. They took a substantial loss for the first 2 years. Worked out to the customer's advantage. After that contract ended, we contracted with their second company, did tremendous negotiations with them. A year and a half into the contract, or approximately 2 weeks ago, they came back to us and said they were going to have to substantially raise their charges because they were losing money. So with the implementation of our new software system, this is an ideal time to look at changing our online bill pay. So what customers have right now is kind of the Ford Escort of online bill pay. It's very basic. Not only is it basic in that customers are making blind payments, they can't see anything pertaining to their account. Once the payments are made online, we get a report, and daily we have to re-enter all of those transactions into our system. So it's convenient for the customer, it's extra work for staff. With the increased payments, and in one case with credit cards being almost double, $8.95 per transaction, that's a high price for someone making a $100 or $200 utility payment. So I'm bringing to you an alternative offered by our current software providers. One, their fees are based on percentages. So it would be very affordable to what customers are paying now for someone making a $100 or $200 payment. Someone going online to make a $1,000 payment, as some of our commercial customers do, or a $5,000 payment, they will probably be deterred from making payments online. But they have other options. Customers will be able to view their account online. They can look at payment history. They can look at the details of the bill. When they make a payment, it's real time. It posts instantly to their account. So there's no more additional work for us to do when we come in the next morning to post those payments. There is a matter of us getting out of the contract that we're in. I've had some discussion with Bob Spence. We know for certain we can get out at the end of September of this year, but we believe because of the price increase, once we tell them that it's not acceptable to us, give them a 30-day notice, I feel like we can exit that contract. I didn't want to even talk about canceling our current contract until I got approval on what's presented before you tonight. So if this is acceptable to you, this contract that we're in could make the town money, not that that's our objective, but there's the potential there, or it could cost the town money. Now, you may say, well, we don't ever want it to cost. Anyone that steps to our counter with a credit card, we're paying the price. Last month, we paid $6,600 to PNC Bank for the privilege of taking debit and credit cards. So we're already paying the cost. We're trying to minimize the cost with online bill pay. I think that's all the points I really wanted to make. Are there questions?
Any questions, Greg? You've looked at it, you think it's good?
I look at it, I think it's fair. And this particular contract comes with no term. We can cancel at any time. And I'm going to monitor for the first 3 months to determine what our exact costs are, and I can report that back to you at a later date.
What is the customer convenience fee for the one we have now?
It varies depending on the type of payment. Credit card is $4.95, about to go to $8.95. Debit card.
It's going to be $250 with the new company, is that correct?
Say again?
It's going to be $250 with the new company if we go with that, is that correct?
It's going to be 2.5% of what they're paying. So I just gave a $100 example for easy math. If it was $200, it'd be twice that.
You're going to have to confirm to exit from the old plan before you go to the new plan.
Yes.
I move we approve the request that we can get out of the old plan without penalty.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to business item number 3, discussion concerning 2 requests to refund taxes of more than $100 from 2 property owners in downtown municipal service district. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me. Our town attorney has received 2 requests to refund taxes, citing that taxes for downtown Smithfield Development Corporation or downtown service district are illegal. When this was brought to our attention on advice of our attorney, we sent a letter to both people denying their request. Upon review and review of the statute, it seemed like since this is more than $100, it should come to the council, and they should make that determination. You're asked tonight to make a decision only if the tax issued as a downtown service district, which is 19 cents per $100 tax evaluation, is legal or not. On pages 244 and 245, you have the history of the special tax district, the public hearing that was held, the vote that was held, and the resolution that was approved by the sitting council at that time. A copy of the resolution is also on page 246, as well as a map of what is the downtown district approved at that time. All of staff believes that the tax is legal. All the research we've done says that it is legal. I will let our town attorney weigh in as to his views on this, but I would urge the staff or to the council to issue a finding that the tax is issued legally against the downtown service district.
I think that's what you ought to find. He's giving you statutes. Never did fully understand why they think it's illegal. But that would keep us here longer trying to speculate. The bottom line is downtown service districts are a feature of our statute. There are a number of special service districts that you can have, and downtown service districts are authorized by the legislature, so if you create them in accordance with the statute, you have the right to tax.
Any questions for manager or the attorney regarding this?
I do have a question. Why does the person making the request feel that it's illegal? Did they express their concerns?
They did express their concerns to the county tax office, and rather than being, I think they had an argument about a parking space near the Howell Theater. They were basically just thinking they weren't getting enough of their money. All right.
No. This is not a public hearing, so let the comments stay here, addressed to these gentlemen up here, so that we don't get out of control here. But I think there is a letter in your package.
On page 241 and 243, you have the information provided by those 2 gentlemen.
So any questions or anything for manager or the attorney?
If you look at those, it's the main issue is the manner of operation of the district.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory there, documented.
I would also point out, Mr. Mayor, on page 255 is taxpayer remedies under section 1. A valid defense for this is only an illegal tax levied for an illegal purpose, and a tax imposed through clerical error. That's the only 3 things that someone can approach the council with in regards to any type of tax refund. Tax imposed through clerical error obviously didn't meet their criteria. They feel, therefore, it's an illegal tax. It's just a personal opinion.
What's the pleasure of the board here?
I have a question. So the legislators give us the right to make that tax? Is that what you said?
That's correct.
Which makes it a legal tax because we have
Correct.
the right to do so by legislation, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I understand the arguments that petitioners, if you will, have made. I just don't see how we as a board can say something's illegal, and the legislature made it legal, and the previous councils adopted it. It applies to every person in the district.
There has been bills put forth in the legislature the last couple of years that would allow members of a service district to opt out. However, those laws have not passed. They have been discussed, so I would imagine they will continue to be discussed in the future, and that is really where the remedy lies for these two gentlemen.
Well, and also to work with downtown development.
Yes.
But I get it. I mean, I've read their letters. I mean, I understand their frustration. It's logical frustration. I just want everybody to do anything.
All right. Have a motion, one way or the other?
What motion are we looking for?
To find that the downtown service district tax was created legally and continues to be legal.
I make that motion.
I have a motion stating that the downtown development tax is legal per North Carolina general statute. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, we'll move on to business item number 4, consideration and approval to eliminate the 2-hour parking limit on the 300 block of Johnston Street. Mike?
This is very straightforward. You have a letter in your packet from Downtown Smithfield Development Corporation requesting that the 2-hour parking limit be eliminated in the 300 block of Johnson Street. On page 260, you have a schedule of 2-hour parking restrictions and the current statute. All we would be doing is eliminating those areas on the 300 block of Johnson Street. As part, if the council chooses to do that, I would also ask that they amend the schedule to remove the 200 block of West Market and the 300 block of West Market, since parking is no longer available there since the widening of the street and the bridge was put in. So we would be updating that at the same time. I believe the intent of this is to free up parking for the businesses in that area that have a special need to allow people to park longer than 2 hours. Police chief has been consulted. He has no objection to the changes. We really don't have any objection as staff.
Have you asked all of the business owners on that street, as just the few who have the concern?
That, I have not. That's a question that Sarah Edwards would have to answer, since it's their request.
Sarah, did you hear the question?
So back in September of 2017, at the request of property owners, we did a survey of the businesses that have 2-hour parking on the street immediately in front of their businesses. And at that time, the request was that the parking limits be enforced. At that time, that was the only question that we asked of them. We did get some mixed responses back with suggestions of what might be, and we kind of said we need to really assess the situation first, if it's enforced as the parking schedule states that it should be. So we did receive at that time a few business owners who asked that Johnston Street potentially be left open for all-day parking, as well as other recommendations ranging from permits to all sorts of other things. But at that point, the question was just an enforcement of the existing regulations.
And so what was, you had the, what was the outcome, and what was
The majority,
percentage-wise?
I can't remember the percentage, to tell you the truth. It was split. There was a majority, though, and they said they'd like the 2-hour parking limits to be enforced. And at that time, we came to the council, I believe it was in October, and asked that the parking limits be enforced. And then on the first week of November, enforcement began.
And so now, have you gone back to those same people on that same street to ask them if we move it away from it? Would you be okay with it? Because, I mean, I don't want to turn around next month, have somebody else come in and want to move back because, you see my point? I mean, I just want to make sure that what we do it right for the majority of the people that serve businesses on that street.
That block of Johnston Street's a little bit different. It doesn't tend to have the same turnover as other areas, particularly the block of Johnston Street between 3rd Street and 2nd Street. That is certainly more well-used typically. So we were not seeing that 300 block of Johnston Street was being used as much. And there was some underutilized parking there. I did reach out to Ruffin Johnson, who owns 310 Johnston Street, and is the only property owner in that block that doesn't have a parking lot served, or a parking lot on their property. And he said that he would be amenable to removing the limits. The first person that brought this to our attention was Bill Johnson, the owner of the Howe Theater. But both First Baptist Church, the Old Town Hall, and Cecil's, they all have, and Austin Manor, they all have their own parking lots and don't tend to run into issues.
So what's gonna happen if I want to go downtown and eat and need to park there beside the Howell Theater? I'm not gonna have a parking place now.
Say it again, I'm sorry.
If I want to go downtown and eat and park there beside the Howell Theater on Johnson Street, I'm likely not to have a parking place.
You got your own park.
If we eliminate the 2-hour parking.
And that's possible. There are many varying needs that the businesses have. And we think that this is a way to compromise on those needs. But there are realistically within 2 blocks of the intersection of Johnston Street and 3rd Street, there are 9 parking lots, large parking lots. And we very much think that the downtown businesses are worth the walk. And there's some parking education that is happening, certainly to better improve knowledge of those parking lots. When the wayfinding sign system is implemented, it'll also better identify parking lots, particularly from Market Street. So that should make things easier as well.
You know, I'd be willing to try it on a trial basis. I'd want to report back in, say, a couple months and see. If somebody's parking long-term, they ought to park in one of these lots you're talking about. If they want to park short-term, they ought to be able to park on the street.
And that's something that we continually sort of ask of our business owners and their employees as well, is that they really should be parking in those lots further away to improve access for their customers and their neighbors' customers as well.
Can we do it for a trial period and see? Or is that going to really
You could,
wreak havoc?
Bob can correct me if I'm wrong, but you could approve the ordinance with a sunset that needs to come back to you at a certain time for final approval.
Is there a question? Would it be appropriate if we, instead of taking action tonight, ask you to go back and poll your business again and see what their wishes are? Or is that, you feel like that's a waste of time based on what you just told us?
I think I will get another mixed bag. I think in that circumstance, I would get maybe some business owners who don't even care because it's so far from their business. When we initially did the survey, it was of the 100 South and North Block of 3rd Street, same locations on 2nd Street, Johnston Street, Market Street, some sections of Bridge Street as well. And I think for most of the business owners, that one block of Johnston Street doesn't really have a tremendous impact on them. But I would be glad to.
I move we table the request so we can discuss it and think about it further.
I second.
A motion and a second to table the request. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to business item number 5. Consideration and approval to request the use of occupancy tax funds for engineering services for a new design of the Neuse River Amphitheater.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we move forward trying to encourage growth in our downtown area, one thing that has come up is the stage area that's down there that is used now near the Smithfield Theater, and enhancing that into some type of an amphitheater, something similar to what the photograph is up here. Johnston County Tourism approached us, and they had taken the initiative to contact some engineers to try to design such an improvement. And they also came up with a price of about $10,000 to do that. And that contract and scope of work is in your packet of what would be done for that amount of money. What they are asking for is approval to use $10,000, the money that they hold, it's tourism dollars that they hold through, that they receive through occupancy taxes that filter through the town, that is somewhat held in our name to further this, this design. And see if it's something that's worthwhile. Obviously, we're talking about something that is going to be very expensive to do, and we may need to try to find some private-public partnerships to make this happen in the end, as well as maybe some part-of money. But until we have a design created, we can't do any of those things. So really, we're at a spot where we can spend a little money that's is held by tourism. It doesn't really come out of our budget at all, that we could only use for tourism-related things like this. Or we can be satisfied with the stage that we have and the use that we have, and not, we'll look elsewhere for possible growth ideas in the downtown area.
I like it. I like it a lot, actually. I'm in favor, let's move.
Is that a motion,
I'm
sir?
making a motion, let's go.
All right.
I like it.
Buster, don't spend it. Fast. All right, I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Proceed forward, Mr. Manager.
Thank you.
I have business item number 6. Consideration and approval to update the sanitary sewer standards. Ted?
You almost got it.
Mr. Craig. You're
Gentlemen,
up, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Short and sweet.
Shorts. Okay. Thank you for letting me come to speak to you this evening. The purpose of this presentation is to ask the council to consider and approve the Utilities Department request for an update to the engineering standards for sanitary sewer. The two big questions that would be asked is why the change and what are you really proposing? So let's look at why the change. The simple and obvious reason to make this change and is to modernize and update the existing drawings. The existing drawings can be found on the town website and are dated as approved in the year 2000. Since that time, construction techniques have modernized and certain materials have fallen out of favor. Our current standards do not reflect these changes. Also, since the year 2000, regulations have been passed that are simply not addressed in the current standards. So what is the staff really proposing? We've updated the text to reflect modern methods and materials. For example, the existing text lists reinforced concrete pipe as an acceptable sewer main material. Experience has noted that concrete is not a good choice for sewer main line material due to the corrosive nature of sewer gas. Also, there's many references in the text that refer to NCDEHNR. This organization was reorganized into NCDENR in June of 1997, which was in turn replaced by DEQ in 2013. Secondly, the Utilities Department has redrawn the standard details for clarity and had text within the drawings to be updated. Lastly, as I mentioned, certain laws were passed since 2000. In 2005, this town enacted the first fats, oils, and grease ordinance, which is not reflected in the current standards. Similarly, in 2015, the state mandated that underground utilities, which are non-ferrous or non-metallic, must be able to be found by means of reasonable business practices. Smithfield has never really addressed that until now. So here's an example of the updated drawing where staff has merely taken and redrawn the picture, added some text for clarity, and stamped a more current logo and date. And then here's an example of the new standard which was added. This one is referring to the aforementioned grease trap, which should be built by new food service establishments. So, as I refer to your packet, we're here to update the utility standards, sewer ones only, which is section 7. Because it was warranted, the existing ones are a little out of date, and I use the term little generously. Standards have been modified to reflect our current practices and standards and materials, and updated standards we also have added to take effect upon council approval. And that's short and sweet, gentlemen.
Any questions?
Mr. Credo, based on the new standards, if you have a business that doesn't meet that, how would we help them become compliant?
There was no provision to punish somebody who's been grandfathered away. This really applies to newer development as Smithfield prepares to grow. I'm not going to go, chasing that, that's not going to do us any good.
Make a motion to approve the request.
Second. Motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. Council members' comments. Any comments from the council this time?
Yeah, I got a couple I would like to make. First of all, I would like to I want to give a happy birthday shout out today to one of my friends growing up, his father. Today is Mr. Jack Temple. Today is his birthday, and I grew up with his son, Will, Officer Jackson, playing basketball, and even to this day, Mr. Temple, he can find a way to come support a game, but I'd definitely like to say happy birthday to him. A couple of years ago, we had a young gentleman come in here and kind of introduced himself as athletic director at Triple S, and Mr. Marvin Burke has decided that he was going to be moving back home, so he actually left last week, but I definitely like to thank him for the time that he did over at Triple S and trying to serve my alma mater. I'd like to thank Gary for all his work and everything he's been doing over at the Sarah Yard Community Center. Actually, last week, he and I shot a little pool together, and every time I kept turning my head, I noticed that he was moving the balls. And he was cheating me. But anyway, I definitely like to thank him and all the work that he's done. But, council, as we definitely go into this budget, and this really came about today when I was over there. I've been taking my little daughter over there pretty much every day. She's having a great time. But, in talking to one of the volunteers over there, there was a young person that came in there and really was there, but really wasn't feeling what was going on in there. And the basic reason was, and we kind of found out, this kid was hungry. This kid hadn't eaten. So I know it was everything, with them $2 to even get that kid in there, but he hadn't eaten anything. And, you know, $2, you know, for a kid to be coming in there, it's nothing to us. But when you dealing with kids, you know, probably free and reduced lunch, we on spring break, you know, some of the kids, they may not be eating. So, you know, what I was kind of looking at is, you know, yeah, here we have a nice building over there, and some of them kids still ain't gonna be able to go in there. And everybody's been talking about the scholarships and everything else, but I mean, them kids, they don't know them scholarships available. And if you put your hand, if you try to give them something, they probably won't even take it. And that's coming from their parents or whatever. So, you know, my thing, I was kind of looking at it, are you gonna sell flip-flops in Antarctica? No, you ain't gonna sell flip-flops. So my thing is, you know, we have a building over there, and, you know, part of the fee, I mean, that place is not gonna make money, but, you know, part of the fee, and it really kind of hurt me in the email we got is, you know, we don't want to turn it to babysitting. Where at $2, you know, I could go put $500 into it, and we could dump kids in there. So you're gonna get the same effect. But I don't look at it as babysitting. But my thing is, for a lot of them kids, it's a safe haven. It's somewhere they can, you know, go, have some structure, you know, and if it's $20 and a parent dropped them off, you know, I mean, we can call it what we want. That parent might be dropping that kid off, she may be going shopping, so in essence, it may be babysitting, but we don't know that. But I just say, as we go into this budget cycle, you know, I personally feel that we shouldn't be charging them kids anything. I mean, we can get enough volunteers in there, we can get the staff to go in there, but, you know, just what happened, you know, having a young person come in there and was hungry, it definitely enlightened me, because during the spring break, me and my little girl, we could probably be at the beach, we could be somewhere everywhere. But, you know, just for a lot of them kids, you know, that is their little safe haven. So it's just something, you know, that I hope we can, you know, really think about. Tonight during the citizen comments, a young man came up here and spoke on the buffer, the fencing, in which, you know, that's a real issue. There was a committee that served on, you know, as far as putting the buffer up. I didn't want to serve on it, but I mean, it just seemed like it makes common sense that that fence should have extended all the way down. I did hear from the former planning director that, you know, now I'm hearing contradicting stories that it was somebody else's land and they didn't want it up there. But I just think that's, you know, it should have been more common sense for the fence to go ahead and go down anyway. The man made the comment, you know, there was no feedback given, and what Tony Nixon is always talking about is kicking the can down the road. But, you know, we could spend $10,000 with no explanation at the amphitheater where it's gonna flood, it's gonna flood, it's gonna flood, it's gonna flood. And, you know, I just really don't get it. And then for him to be told, why don't he spend money to put the fence up? I just really don't, I don't really think that's fair. I don't understand it. I really don't. I can probably call it what I want to call it, but I don't think that's fair. That's all the comments I'm gonna have for now.
Thank you, Council. Any other comments?
Yeah, I have a few. First of all, I'd like to say that Dave and I attended the school governance this past month, and I think it was a learning experience. I did learn a lot, and I hopefully that we can help conduct the business better now that we have got those things behind us. I also had an opportunity to attend the Main Street Conference with Sarah Edwards and her folks. It was nice to meet some of her people. It was some very eye-opening things that I think that we're actually now working with some things with the town manager and all, and seeing how we can utilize some of those resources in West Smithfield, which is somewhat in a way similar to depressed downtown areas. If you look at it that way, what they used to be and what they are today. And so there's some possibilities that we might do something there. So we're looking into that. Also, I wanted to say that the one thing I think that Kuzi mentioned, he didn't mention this, and I wanted him to, but he didn't, and then didn't have time for comments, was that the equipment there that he put out there for the kids that have disabilities is not just for kids with disabilities. It is great equipment for all ages. So those little kids that would get hurt and going out there to regular, they're going to be safeguarded too. So not just the kids that have disabilities, but parents can feel safe about bringing their kids out there whether they have a disability or not. So it's not just for disability. Great work that they did, and I'm excited about that. Also, the last thing is Triple S Strong is coming up. I don't have the date of that. I know I just saw an invitation. So did you guys get an invitation in the mail? It's coming up. I recommend that we all try to go, not just us here, but all of us try to go and support our local high schools and what they're trying to do. You know, everybody wants to bombard, and you always hear bad things about our neighborhood and our community, and we need to bond together and show that we support our community. I'm not a graduate Triple S, but my son is, and I was from North Johnson. That's a different story. But I dated girls from Triple S, so what can I say? Hey, that didn't turn out well either, but that's a different story. Anyway, but we appreciate that. Those are my comments.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? All right, turn it over to the manager, and the manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very quickly, Booker Dairy Road is, the construction part of the project is underway. So they'll actually be tearing up road now and replacing it and widening. So you will be seeing that in your travels there. The fire department is currently flow testing hydrants. If you see them out, see them at a fire hydrant, they're not at a fire. There's nothing necessarily wrong with the fire hydrant. We're just flow testing pressures as we do every year. The police department received its first reaccreditation last month. Kudos to them. Congratulations. Job well done. The town is also looking to implement the emailing of all of our paycheck stubs to our employees, and that would include the council members and the mayor as well, if you so desire. We are encouraging everyone to provide us with an email address to allow us to email those. It takes a whole lot less staff time to push a button, and it also saves us a lot of money in paper over the course of a year and envelopes if we don't have to put all those in paper form. So if you're interested in that, just let me know.
Just let Shannon know.
Yep, let Shannon know, that's fine. If you want you used at your town email, that's fine. If you want it to a personal email, that's fine too. Just let us know where to send it. We're also doing something similar with utility bills. We are encouraging our customers to provide us with an email address and go to paperless billing so that we no longer have to pay the postage, the cost of the paper, the envelopes, as well as the company that we contract with to do that. When we could email that to you, get it immediately, you can, if you want a hard copy, you can print it off yourself and keep it, or you can just come in and pay it at your leisure. I've been a part of both things for quite some time. I kind of used my email addresses as a test for both paychecks and billing, and I've been very pleased with it, and I haven't had any problems with it at all. So it works very slick, and it's very easy. It's one more way for our citizens and our customers to help us keep their bills low, because this is an expense that we won't have to endure if we can get people to sign up for it. And that is all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. All right, would like to ask the council, entertain a motion to, instead of to adjourn, to recess. We have budget coming up, and I believe
Like to set a meeting.
we'd like to set a meeting and a date for our first budget meeting. So, Mr. Manager, did you have a specific date in mind?
I would recommend we look at 1 week from tonight, April 10th, as our first budget meeting, if that works in everybody's.
Tax season? You want to wait till after tax season?
Oh, I'm open for whatever.
One more week, would that?
So I can do
help you?
whatever the
Well, you'll
council-
probably be gone that week, right?
No, I'll be back.
Does that help you, though?
I mean, it's fine, the 24th would be better for me, but I know times will be, 24th would be good for me.
24th. Wait till 24th.
It's up to the council. I have to provide you with a recommended formal budget no later than the 1st of June. That's by statute. And you have to finalize your budget process by the end of June. And normally, we try to make it so that we can approve that budget at our first council meeting in June, so we don't have to have additional special meetings for that. We also have to have a public hearing for the budget. So the longer you wait and push that out, the less meetings you're going to have to discuss it. That's all I'm going to say in regards to the matter. I'll bring a balanced budget to you, so it's not like you're creating the budget, but if you want to add things or take things away, that takes some time.
What do you guys think?
I'll make it work either way. What'd you say, the 7th, the 10th?
The 10th was a date I suggested, but again, I'm available whenever you are. So.
Anybody do April 10th? Travis cannot that day.
7 o'clock, I'll be able to make
How
it.
about the 17th?
17th?
I'll be out of town the week.
That works for you?
We have a major Skills USA event for school in Greensboro, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of that week, so I'm not available at all.
About the 16th.
Little League tournament that night in the Four Oaks, so just know I'm not available. Sorry.
You're not gonna get us all together anyway.
I can do that. I mean, that's right. 24's good, though.
That might be too late.
Let's go with something.
All right.
Go with something, we need to shut it down.
We'll go with, why don't we say the 24th? It seems to work with everybody. And then that just means that,
We'll have to stay
6
alone.
o'clock? 6
Whatever the
o'clock?
pleasure of the council.
6 o'clock on the 24th, if that works. And then just know that we'll probably have to have several, in between then and the end of May. But of course, I don't think it's really much different than what we normally do that way, right? So obviously, the earlier the better, but we'll get it done.
I would just say, as far as my schedule is concerned, if we can plan 2 weeks in advance and beyond, because typically I know what's going on. Beyond that, 2 weeks is tough.
So why don't, Mr. Manager, over the next week or so, if you can get some dates together for the following, we'll go ahead and put proposed dates out. We'll just email that out and go from there. That way you can at least see and vote on it at our next meeting, and then at our first meeting. That's good. All right? Okay. So do I have a motion to recess to April 24th?
Make a motion, we recess to April 24th, 6, 7 o'clock.
Second. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Stand recessed. Jesus.